Hello and welcome to the Desert Deployment Podcast. I'm David, and as always, I'm here with Jack.
Hello.
And this is a Old World special episode where about our sort of thoughts of the new game. Now it's all officially released, and people have had a chance to look at books and rules and models and future news for the hobby as well. So yeah, that's the plan.
That's what you're
So
gonna do. Yeah,
yeah.
so pretty much obviously Old World's been out now for like a couple of days. But due to the wonders of the internet, obviously all the books were leaked, they all leaked like over the last few weeks anyway. So it's sort of like, we had all the books in hand. So yeah, I've had a chance to play quite a few games now. You haven't played at all yet, have you, Dave?
I Unfortunately, I'm so eager to, but yeah, no, I haven't had the chance yet, I'm afraid.
Seeing all the stuff online of people getting Old World stuff out and being like, ah!
Oh yeah, being very
Yeah.
jealous.
And it's looking pretty, yeah, it's looking pretty good, isn't it? I mean, the amount of people that obviously have just like dived like balls deep into it already.
Oh
It's
yeah, and
a
it's
lot.
it's
So, I mean, there's
go on.
yeah, go on. No, go on, go on, go on,
I
go
was,
on.
I was going to say, as one of the things sort of on seeing online across all the different hobby groups that I'm part of on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff is just seeing people like getting into it fresh that never did fantasy but are really interested and intrigued by Old World and jumping
Mm.
headfirst into that. But also on the other side of it is all the people going, oh, I haven't touched this army in like 15, 20 years or whatever, and they're getting the wiping the dust off their old forces. It's just really good to see it. And I think apart from some feel bads with the ordering and distributing and all of that, I think on the whole it generally seems to be mainly positive vibes I'm getting from the
Yeah,
community.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's like so. I think the only sort of negative sort of vibes I'm really seeing off anyone, it's just been because people haven't been able to get the stuff. But I think Games Workshop just underestimated the demand, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to be said for. I think Games Workshop did obviously they thought, well, we're going to sell this much and we'll limit it to this much to be safe.
Mm.
And people obviously just really fucking wanted it, which is good. It's really nice to see. It's nice that fantasy can sell because if you were a game, if you kind of looked at things from, I mean, when did they sort of stop selling fantasy? Was it about 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah, probably
Um,
about that.
Whenever that was, it was a failing product line, and that's for various reasons. It was sort of at the time Games Workshop everything was incredibly expensive for what you got. I mean, if you
Yeah.
adjust for inflation now, the models are actually cheaper now um, than they were. You know, they're significantly cheaper than they were there when they were on sale last. And so everything was
Yeah.
very expensive. You need large amounts of models, and I think the game just it was a it wasn't the game that people were wanting to play back then, was it? Well, I say that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that still wanted to play it and still, were playing it, but through one reason or the other, maybe due to recession, due to the cost of the models, it obviously wasn't making Games Workshop money, and they were all, they were very close to going under. I know there's a lot of connections with that, with the Middle Earth license, the kind of a bubble bursting on that.
Mm.
But Games Workshop were very close to ceasing to trade. But they pulled it back, and obviously fantasy was a casualty of that. But it's obviously nice to see that there's a lot of fans of fantasy out there still, and you could have obviously we knew there were a lot of fans of fantasy, but it's nice to see that there's a lot of people that were willing to buy into it, and
Yeah.
it sell out, and yeah, the demand obviously outstripped the supply. So
Yeah. I think obviously one of the things that didn't help was obviously they were struggling to get fresh players into the game,
mm,
or at least that's one of the that's been quoted to me by GW staff. And I think now that they've got a lower model count game like Age of Sigmar, which is supposedly more straightforward, rules wise to learn the game, that kind of
mm,
gets people that are fresh into the hobby that don't want to buy, hundreds and hundreds of line troops. It gets them into wargaming, and then they go, "Oh, Old World looks cool. Let's try that." So I think that might be the winning formula for it going forward, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a lot to be said just for the fact that it's people that want it, all the people, a lot, not all, but a lot of the people on into Old World are the people that probably really, really love fantasy, but they were just too young to afford it back then. But now
Yeah,
they've all got full paying jobs.
yeah,
And also 3D printers exist, so you've got the combination of people actually being able to afford things,
mm,
and being able to bulk out things with 3D prints if they need to. So it's almost the perfect time for fantasy, really.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, it's really really good to see it, and yeah, as I say, it's just been fantastic seeing all loads of people starting projects either with old models that they had that they maybe didn't finish, or they're touching up some older stuff, because obviously if you had a finished army back when fantasy was still supported, your painting skills probably going to have come on a bit since then. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool seeing all the different stuff and people finding old models and old sets that maybe are still in the cellophane sort of thing. Like I saw one earlier, and it was one of the terrain sets for the Empire Village, and it had
Oh
the little
yeah.
watchtower and the manor
Oh
house and
mate.
all the fences and stuff. And I was like, oh, that looks just so.
Oh mate, I'll tell you what, if those come back, if Games Workshop starts selling those again, obviously at a reasonable price, because I mean they go on eBay for like fucking hundreds of pounds now.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But they were brilliant sets, and
Mm.
I think the only reason it just didn't seem like the time they're out. It just didn't seem like. Well, I don't know. It was it's a it's a weird one. It seems like they're a great terrain kit, and you'd think they'd sell tons of them. Maybe if they came back now, they would perhaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be interesting. So anyway, let's say we've seen some really good hype. Obviously, it's the out. More people want the books than are available, but the books are available online.
Yep.
They've got the PDF versions out now, or if you want to just get an online PDF version, it's out there. People have got links to it, so you can get a hold of the rules now. And I mean, so obviously you haven't played yet, Dave. So what's what from what you've read and what you've looked at? What's the vibe you're taking from it?
I mean, it sounds like there's a couple of little um, tricks and stuff that people have been sort of thinking up since, and maybe a couple of little bits that might seem on face value a bit overpowered, but it seems to be like it's generally quite rounded balance wise by the
Yeah.
sounds of things, and from what I've seen from because there is so many battle reports coming out online at the moment for Old World, which is
Mm.
fantastic. So I'm kind of living my gaming dreams through through watching other people's battle reports. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it seems to be quite well put together. People are picking it up quickly, and sort of given the amount of time that quite a lot of these YouTubers have had to do these battle reports. They've obviously picked it up quite quickly, and it's only sort of like odd little situations where they're sort of having to stop recording and go and check the book and then coming back sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like it flows really well, and yeah, the couple of bits in there that sort of at first sounds a bit like, oh, that doesn't sound very good, or so for example the step up rule,
Back of step up. Yeah.
um, that sounded a bit, oh, but then looking at battle reports and talking to people who have played games, it does actually seem to work. So it's like, oh, okay, well, and I think that's quite going to be quite a common theme with quite a lot of people's viewpoints and uh, you know opinions on the rules is reading them compared to playing them are going to be two different things. You can sort of look at something on paper and think of an isolated instance where something might be broken or overpowered or something. But actually, when you start playing games, you might find that specific scenario that you're thinking up hardly ever comes up, or is quite obvious. So you and your opponent sort of plan around it as a part of your strategizing. But yeah, it seems to be, from what I've witnessed, and unfortunately not experienced yet, a quite rounded system. But yeah, you've had a few games. So what's your experience been?
Yeah, so I've played 5 games now. So I've played Bretonia every game. So
Yeah.
I've played Bretonia since I was like 15. So I think 15, maybe 16, maybe probably 15. So I've had Bretonia for a long time. Just to put into context, I'm 30 now. So, so it's been a while. I've been playing Bretonia for a few years. Um,
Yeah.
so so sort of the first comment I suppose is how much Bretonia has changed. So they're different. They're a similar vibe to what they were before. They're a little bit different. The main thing is you've got a lot more options. So Bretonia, they've been a really old book up to now.
Mm.
And they kind of there was a lot of options in the Bretonian book that you just didn't work. Like you literally couldn't take them anymore because just the rules outdated what the rules did in that book.
Yeah.
Or they were just completely, they weren't a usable unit, if you know what I mean, or you're like a usable item. They just didn't have any effect. They cost many points. Or
Mm.
just again the way the game had changed, you just couldn't spend. It didn't work. So that's changed, and there's a few more units and options in there for Returner because they're still. I think they're still the faction with the smallest amount of units by quite a long way. But
Oh, okay.
they've got more units. Obviously you've got the Exiles list. They've brought back a couple of units from really old editions. So Squires are back, and they were last in 5th edition, which was over 20 years ago now.
Right.
So Squires have come back as a unit. They're not super different to sort of skirmishing bowmen, but they're a little bit different. They've got a couple of different rules. They're enough that they're playable. Then
Mm.
you've got different units in the. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll probably have a little look through the Bretonian book, and I can sort of describe stuff in there. So Britannia have got a lot more. They've got more units, not a lot more, but some. They've got more units. They've got more options. They've got a peasant hero for the first time in 20 years as well, which is cool.
Beautiful.
So you still can't play a full peasant army. You do need to have knights,
Right.
but you can take peasant characters now, which is really cool because that was missing from the last book. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't a deal breaker, but being able to have peasant heroes is quite good. It's just a fun little addition because the peasants would have leaders. They would still have these sergeants at arms and that would sort of look after the forts and sort of be in charge of the men at arms and the rabble. So it's
Yeah.
good that they're back in. So yeah, so Bretonia's changed a bit. I'd probably say wow, I'm trying to think sort of the main changes of Sage Returning. So first charge is quite an important one, which most of the night units have. So first charge is the first charge they make of the game. They disrupt the enemy unit, which means the enemy don't get a rank bonus.
Yeah.
Which on paper sounds really good, but rank bonuses actually don't matter that much in this edition. They're not as big of a thing as they were in 8th.
Really?
So yes, they're not as important, I don't think.
Okay.
So it's not as good as it first seems. However, on the flip side of that, large night blocks are very good because they've got a high unit strength. So we've obviously seen a lot of stuff in the videos, haven't we? A lot of people I think online as well are saying, "Oh, like little units are going to be the way to go," and I think that absolutely is not the case. So from the
Yeah.
games I've played, we've noticed that large units are definitely the way to go. They stick around for a long time because unit strength is very important now.
Yeah.
So with the new mechanics of falling back, you have the 3 stages. You have sort of 3 stages of break test.
Yeah.
So when you lose a combat, obviously rank bonus does count. So I'll go into why rank bonus isn't that much of an issue anymore. Is that rank bonus is you still get as much as you did before. So you get 1 for being in close order now, or being in an equivalent order. So Bretonia, for instance, because they have a specialist formation, which is the Lance formation, they get 1 combat res for being in that formation. So
Yeah.
close order is just your dudes are with it, they're all in their block. That's close order. So There's open order as well, which is very similar, but you don't. That's just it's a very slightly different thing. But we'll just talk about close order for now. It's 99% of the units in the game are close order. So you get 1 for being in close order, which means you're in a formation. You get a point for that. You then get 1 for every rank or complete rank of that your troop type requires to get a rank bonus. So for most models, that's 5. For heavy units, that's 4. For monstrous infantry, or monstrous cavalry, that's 3. So heavy units will be Bretonnian Knights, Chaos Knights, Foot Knights, Chaos Warriors, anything that's sort of bulked up in heavy armor. So if you're a heavy unit, so heavy infantry and heavy cavalry, they only need to be 4 wide to get their rank bonus and count as being in formation. And they also can't be disrupted in the flank unless they're charged by an enemy with unit strength 10 or more. So unit strength, which is the next thing. So unit strength is, if you've played any like 6th edition or any of the older editions from there, you remember how unit strength works. In most stuff, your unit strength 1 if you're an infantry, and then if you're bigger than infantry, so cavalry have unit strength 2, and then from there it's dictated by the unit type. Sometimes it's how many wounds they start with, sometimes the unit type just gains unit strength X per model. So you'll take your unit strength times by the amount of models you have, and that's your overall unit strength.
Right.
So 15 Knights of the Realm is unit strength 30, because they're each Knight of the Realm has a unit strength of 2. So, well, the way the new break tests work is that if you're charged and you lose the combat, you take a leadership test. Now, if you're not outnumbered by 2 to 1, or sorry, over 2 to 1 on unit strength, then you take what will be the new style of break test. So you roll your leadership test. If you roll under your leadership, but above the modifier, then you just fall back in good order.
Right.
So fall back in good order is you fall back, you roll your break. You roll your fallback, you fall back the highest dice number, and then you immediately rally once you've fallen back, and then your opponent chases you up. So even if they catch you, they don't kill you. You just fight another round of combat. But if you roll over your leadership, you do still break and flee, but it's very, very difficult to break and flee now. So it's very likely you'll break and flee. However, if you are outnumbered by over 2 to 1 and you lose a combat, you will break on with the modifier. So if you lose a combat by 4 and your leadership 7, you need to get 3 or less. And if you don't do that, you'll break and flee. So a large knight block, and bear in mind, step up's not a thing anymore. So knights on the charge, because they get an initiative bonus now, you're looking at +3 to initiatives, they'll probably hit an initiative 6. So they'll be going before most units. So they can kill the front rank, the enemy can't fight back, they'll lose by 4 or 5, or whatever it is, then they'll break, and then they'll get cut down with the knights. So that is really, really powerful. So it's made those large knight blocks very, very scary against large units. So that's probably one of the biggest changes. Is cavalry. You don't need to have the Baron of the Lady anymore because it doesn't exist. Funnily enough, but you can break people on the charge now with large knight blocks, which means you keep your momentum going because knights need to keep flowing. So now with Bretonnia, obviously before you had the lance formation. So lance formation was that kind of bus formation where you were going you were 3 wide and then all your dudes on the sides got to fight. So if you were 3 wide, 5 deep, your 3 dudes at the front would fight and then everyone on every side would fight as well.
Yeah.
So now it's a triangle formation instead, which is everyone on the sides counts as being in the fighting rank, which is exactly the same as it was in effect. So you fight that in effect they will count as being in the front. But it also counts being in base contact as well. So you'll get to make all their full amount of attacks to the enemy, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
But with that formation, if you are charged by anything that you can't countercharge, so if you're already in combat, you can't countercharge. Anything charges you. If you're in a lance formation, you're disrupted. Well, you're blunted is the word. So the lance becomes blunted, which means you immediately form into a close order formation. And you won't have any ranks because of the way the enemy goes into you. Unless they go into the very small unit, you won't be able to get any rank bonus. So suddenly, you've lost all your attacks. Your rank bonus has gone to shit, and you're hitting them with... You might still get your charge bonus if you already charged in, but if you didn't, you're going to be hitting them with strength 3 knights, a couple of attacks, and you're going to fall apart very quickly. So Bretonnia is very, very vulnerable now, the knights being charged.
Yeah. So
By,
yeah,
by infantry, this is mainly. If they're charged by enemy cavalry or chariots, they can counter charge against them, so then they get a charge bonus as well, so they don't get blunted. But if they're
yeah.
charged by infantry or anything that they can't counter charge against, then they're immediately blunted.
So really, you kind of want big block of infantry with maybe something like stubborn to absorb that initial charge and then hold
That's
them there whilst you
exactly
get
what you want.
something going to the side of them.
Yeah, and it's not just Bretonnian Knights though. It's like Chaos Knights are the same sort of story. The Chosen Knights, for instance, they hit like an absolute train. But if you've got a unit that can blunt that, so you want a unit with Unbreakable or Stubborn, and then Shield Wall, ideally,
Yeah.
they'll take the hit from them and then blunt them, and then but obviously they don't actually get blunted because they're in a close order formation anyway. But they'll lose their charge bonuses and they'll get bogged down, and then they'll get cut down. So that's I say that's one of the biggest changes is unit strength, unit sizes and shield wall are very important now. Infantry with shield wall are incredibly valuable. And I think as time goes on, you'll see people want to move more to taking units with shield wall.
Not
And
me.
yeah, well, but it's quite interesting because it's not necessarily stuff that's sort of appeared from the battle reports. Because
Yeah.
they seem to be set to be playing in a very particular way. Like most of the games I've seen with those, they've used little lances of knights, and
Yeah, I think
they've used like fairly small units. Just overall, like they're taking sort of like blocks of like 15 to 20 dudes, that sort of thing. Like it's quite rare you see like a larger unit.
yeah.
But those larger units are, especially if it's quite a hard unit as well, like great swords or chaos warriors,
Mm.
they're really really hard to shift. Anyway, that was a bit of a sort of tangent slightly, but that's just a couple of observations I've made. Over the 5 games, I mean, my sort of takeaway, the top takeaways I'd say before we sort of get into sort of the, all the things I'd like to talk about, and how good it is. First off, it's a really really good game. And if you're thinking about playing Old World, and even if you've played any of the old editions of Fantasy, you will enjoy it. Because it's got all the best bits of every edition, really. I'd say the main dividing factor, I think, is going to be step up. So step up's not in the game. There is a rule called step up, but it's actually the exact opposite of what step up was in 8th edition. I don't know. They just call it. I don't know why they call it step up. It's in effect. It's the 6th edition rule for fighting. So if you lose a guy in the front rank, or if you take, say, if you've got a 5 wide unit and you take 5 wounds on that unit, even though you're taken from the back of the unit, you count as losing 5 men from the front, so they're not allowed to strike. So if you've got a champion, he'll still be able to strike because he can't be taken away unless he's specifically targeted by model in base contact with him.
Yeah.
But won't get to attack. So that does lead to these sort of feel bad moments sometimes where you'll go into someone, you'll kill their whole front rank, and they won't get to attack, and you just win. And that is definitely that's definitely there. And there's if you play 8th edition and you've only played 8th edition, it's definitely something you need to get used to because it can be a little bit jarring, like the idea of your units not attacking. But because of the various changes with initiative bonuses and initiative penalties, it's kind of offset a bit. It's still there, and it can be a bit jarring. And I mean, I've mainly been on the end doing it to people because I'm playing Bretonnia, so I'm mainly doing the charging. You go in and you're like, oh, sorry, you actually just can't attack, and they're like, oh, cool. So yeah, so that's probably the most divisive change. And then the other divisive change I think is magic. So magic is, and again, it's actually quite different to what we're probably seeing in a lot of the battle reports and a lot of how it's being sold, if you know what I mean. So magic is it's very very safe. It's not like 8th edition where there's a good chance you'll blow yourself up if you put too many power dice in it. There's no kind of mini game and mind game phase. That's not really there. There's very, very little incentive to not just cast all your spells. You kind of go, I've got these spells, I'm going to roll for them. To the miscast table, 2 of the results of the miscast table are actually good.
Yeah.
Which is a bit strange. And there's only one of them that's particularly dangerous. So, and even then, if your wizard's on their own, which again is actually quite a good move now, just keeping your wizard out on their own, unless they've got buff spells. So if they've got ranged, they've got enchantments, they have to cast themselves. that affect the unit. But if they've all their spells are ranged, then there's probably there are downsides because you can take a cannonball to the face. They can just show you the cannonball or something. Or another wizard might hit you with a spell. But
Yeah.
in general, because the character targeting rules, you can't target a lone character if they're within 3 inches of a unit of the same unit type, unless that character is the closest target. So as long as you position your wizard properly, you can just put them on their own, and then they're pretty much safe from miscasting. Because the
Yeah.
miscast will affect their unit as opposed to them. They might take a hit every now and then, but they'll probably be fine. So yeah, you can kind of just cast whatever. And Magic's very random as well because it's just 2 dice and add level. Casting and dispelling is a bit kind of like, cool, I'm just gonna do it. You go, "Yep, I'll
Yeah.
just roll. I'll just roll for it. I'll just roll for it." And you can offset that again. You can take power scrolls. So you can take power scrolls, stat the odds. You can take items to give yourself a +1, that sort of thing. But it's just roll dice and go for it. And the other thing, which is definitely something that's not been sort of sold, is you almost need to have a level 4.
I've noticed that even
So
from
if
watching some of the battle reports.
yeah, if you don't have a level 4 wizard, you will struggle to cast or dispel any spells.
Yeah.
Because the cast values are quite high for a lot of the spells. So the magic now is this: you roll 2 dice and you add your wizard level, and if you beat the score, or if you equal to or beat the score of the spell, it goes off. Some
Yeah.
of the spells have 2 levels of effects, where if you get the lower level, it does a weaker version. If you get the higher level, it does a higher version. But if you don't have a level 4 wizard, you will struggle to get some of the spells off. But equally, because dispelling is done on the same roll, so if the enemy's got a level 4, they're adding 4 to their dispel roll. So because the only factor in it is 2d6 plus level, you're at an innate disadvantage with the enemy dispelling. So especially if the enemy's got magic resistance. So magic resistance now is just a minus to your roll. So if you're
Yeah.
casting a spell on a unit and it's magic resistance 2, you take 2 off that roll. So unless you're level 4, you're going to struggle to cast that. And if you do get it off, the enemy wizard is going to easily stop you and shut you down.
Yeah.
So it's odd because it was kind of marketed, I think, as kind of wizards weren't as essential. But they are. I think this is the edition where wizards are most essential. Or level 4s are anyway. Like you need to have a level 4 wizard, or you will struggle.
Yeah.
Again, it's early days, and I could be wrong, but that's what we've taken away. Like, so I've played 5 games, and from that, so it's still like fuck all really. It's spit in the ocean. By the time I played 50, then it might be like, oh yeah, I was completely wrong actually, because there's new stuff we're seeing every day. But obviously, that's what I've taken away from it so far. Is it's like, oof, if you didn't have a level 4, you'd really, really struggle to get anything off.
Yeah.
Or you struggle to shut things down as well.
I think that's the thing as well. Is the shutting down is quite key because if you're up against a level 4 wizard and you're trying to shut down, you're already at quite a disadvantage.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. Yeah, like a level 2 will be. I don't think a level 2 is really going to be able to shut down level 4 unless they just get really, really lucky.
Yeah.
Because in effect, they're 3 down for a dispel now. You need to beat the value to dispel it.
Yeah.
So a level 2, if a level 4 casts something on if they cast something on a 14, so you still get your double 6 is an automatic cast and automatic dispel.
Yeah.
So that's still a thing. So you could still get your double 6. But if you don't get your double 6, you're probably not going to dispel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you can also miscast on dispels as well, which is interesting. So if you roll a double 1 on
Yeah.
dispels, then you miscast. But it uses the same table, which again is a little bit janky because it's kind of geared towards stopping spells. No, stop it. It's geared towards fucking you up in the spell casting aspect. So the dispel miscasts are a little bit janky, but it works still.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of the main. Yeah, that's yeah. So that and the large blocks of units, probably 2 takeaways that I'd say we haven't really necessarily seen when we've been watching the battle reports and that sort of thing for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
It's quite surprising to see how different that is. But going back to the unit strength one, or the large unit one, the benefit of that is it is possible to break units in one go. Because I know there was a lot of people going, oh well, we're never going to be able to break a bit. You won't be able to break a unit. It'll just be a grind for 6 turns. That's definitely not the case. Units do break. Units do flee. It happens quite a lot.
And obviously this might feed into possibly into why we haven't seen it so much on the sort of battle reports. But what size games have you been playing?
So I've played 3 games at 2,000 points, and I've played 2 games at 2,500.
Right,
And I have noticed that 2,000 you fit a lot less models in than you do in 8th edition.
right,
So it's definitely a smaller game, but the games take longer to play as well. So 2,500 8th edition, you will play significantly faster than 2,500 of Old World. Um,
okay,
so yeah, but you say yeah. So the base troop costs are about equivalent to 8th edition. So they're if not cheaper in some cases. But the characters and the magic items cost a lot more.
yeah,
So magic items have pretty much all doubled, I would say. Um, Not everything. Some of the top level, the real high tier stuff is probably about the same. But a lot of the cheap common magic items they've shot up in
yeah,
value. So you do kind of use up your magic allowance quite fast. Yeah, and the characters have all kind of got quite a bit more expensive, just space. But I think that's almost by design. Is
mm,
they've kind of tried to make the characters, tried to almost make it. They've tried to avoid making it too hero hammery.
yeah,
At the same time, though, on the other aspect, most characters have got better in some way or the other. So initiative across the board has come down. So most stuff's quite low initiative now. Even elves aren't they're not hitting initiative 7 regularly.
yeah,
Yeah, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so initiatives come down, but most characters have all gained in general. They've gained some stats here and there, so they're pretty. And you're sort of your upper end lord level characters. They're putting out some serious hurt. They've got some high stats. They've
yeah,
got like four plus wounds, 4 or 5 attacks, weapon skills 7 or 8, that sort of thing.
yeah,
Um, so they're pretty meaty. But yeah, as I say, we've noticed you fit less in though in a 2,000 point list than you would in 8th edition. But the game, as I say, the game does take longer to play. So I wonder if that's kind of by design, perhaps. Is that if you're taking
maybe.
up more special rules, the game, it costs more to kind of balance out the speed of the game. I'm not sure. And
You,
again, it might be a case of once we've learned to play more and everything's memorized, it might flow a bit faster.
yeah, that's literally what I was about to say. Do you think that maybe it's taken a little bit longer just because you are stopping to double check
Yeah,
rules and
no,
stuff like that?
it could well be, yeah. Um, yeah, I played a game with Zach and his high elves on Friday,
Oh
and we
yeah,
didn't spend a lot of time looking at the books for that. Um, and it still took a fair while.
okay,
But, what I have noticed is that games do reach the end of the game. There's like no tabling. You know what I mean? It's very,
that's good.
very rare. Yeah, well, I say no tabling. Well, you haven't had a single game where it's been tabled yet.
Mm.
Um,
And
so
sorry,
yeah, go on. No, go on, Karen.
I was going to say that with obviously playing the two size games there, do you think that the points that you raised about the night blocks and the bigger troop unit sizes being a thing is more, you've noticed it more in the bigger games? Because that's what I'm wondering, is because quite a lot of the uh, online games battle reports seem to be around the 2000 and under marks, which makes it
Yeah.
obviously means you've got less points to buy these bigger blocks of models. So I'm wondering if maybe that's why it hasn't really been seen.
Not necessarily, no. I think at 2,000 you'd be better off taking one block of, say, Chaos Warriors, for instance. I
Mm,
think you're better off taking one block of 45 Chaos Warriors than you would be taking, say, 2 blocks of 22 with Command,
okay.
that sort of thing.
Mm,
Because those large, in fact, I think at the smaller points levels, those larger blocks are almost better because they can stack all the buffs on them. Because
um,
most characters now have some kind of buff they give their unit. And a lot of the spells are like range self or very short range. So you could have like a couple of characters. So that's another thing. It's because obviously the character allowance has changed slightly now. So you
yeah,
get a character allowance of 50%, which in theory it's the same because obviously you would be 25% Lord, 25% hero.
yeah,
But because they overlap now, it's a lot. There's a lot more versatility there. So you can fit a lot of hero level characters. I say a lot of hero level characters. By the time you factor in the magic item costs, it's still less than you would get in 8th. But
Yeah.
you can, you've got those low level characters can kind of dip into the points you probably otherwise be spending on your high level characters, or vice versa. You could take some very high level characters without any hero level ones.
Yeah, that something I've noticed when I've been having a quick look at
Mm.
possible lists and stuff, but, with characters sort of thing, is that whilst obviously, like you say, you've got this bigger space almost to spend points on characters, but then like for example with Beastmen, you can only have one Beast Lord or Doom
Yeah,
Ball per 1,000
yeah,
points. You can only have one Great Bray Shaman per 1,000 points, and it's
yeah,
that's your level 4, level 3, and level 4 wizard there. So it's sort of like, okay, well, actually,
yeah. That's
it's
it. Yeah,
yeah,
no, they have. Yeah, and I like how they've done that. Actually, that's a really
yeah,
elegant way of doing things, and that's another thing I like to say actually. So, like I say, overall, obviously, even if there's bits I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Overall, it's probably the best edition of Warhammer Fantasy. I think it's,
ooh,
that's my hot take of the day. I think it's the best edition.
you
Really,
heard it here first, folks.
yeah. It's and I know there's a lot of touting with that. They've said that like 40K every time they release a new edition, but I think it's best of Warhammer Fantasy. It's
Yeah,
very, very good. It takes a lot of there's a lot of stuff in Warhammer Ancient Battles in it. But then they've also taken just bits from every edition of Fantasy together. But another reason I think it's really good. So it's a very the what I would call, I suppose, the force organization charts,
mm.
or your army list. That is very reminiscent of the Lord of the Rings Legendary Legion. Um, Sort of what's it called? Kind of the Legendary Legion framework. So so
Um,
for anyone that's familiar with Lord of the Rings, will understand what that means. If you're not, Lord of the Rings follows a system where you have a main army list, but then you also have Legendary Legions, which will state that you can take specific characters and specific models. It often modifies their troop, either what they can do, what equipment they can take, how much they cost, or what special rules they get. But if you take that alternative Legion, alternative army list, it then locks you out of doing other things, and it will dictate how many of something you're allowed to take, per X points or per other one of this model, that sort of thing.
yeah,
And they've taken that sort of thing on board. So everyone has a grand army. So your grand army is your overall list. And in that, what they've done is, it's not like Horus Heresy where there's kind of, you must take minimum this, maximum this. It's just, so you don't have like, one troop, one HQ, three heavy support sort of thing.
yeah,
You just have, so in your grand army, everything's always the same. You have a 50% of your points to be spent on characters. 50% can be spent on special. 25% minimum has to be spent on core, and then 25% maximum can be spent on rare. And then each of those categories has a list of what units you can take in that category, and then
yeah,
they'll often be 0 to 1 per 1,000 points or per character. So, I'd say trebuchets, for instance, with Eternia, you can take 0 to 1 trebuchet per 1,000 points. So instead of limiting that model with a hard cap of like 0 to 1 or 0 to 2, it's just the bigger the game, the more you can take. But
yeah,
you can't take tons of them in a little game,
yeah,
which is really good. And like I
yeah. I
say, with
like
the
that.
characters, like I say, but then with your really high level characters like your Bretonian Duke and your Chaos Lord, for instance, they are one per army. No matter
Yeah,
how big the army is, you take one. But then you've got the lower level Lord characters. So they're still, in effect, those lower level Lord characters are probably still the stat line of the Lord characters in, say, 6th, 7th, and 8th. You can take one of those per 1,000 points. So you can have your level 4 wizard, you can have your big beefy Lord, and then but then if you're playing 2,000 points, you could also take another Lord level character who's not going to be as good as either of those, but he's still a Lord level character if you
yeah,
wanted to. Or if you've got a certain character, say you've got a witch elf, because obviously the PDS came out today. If you've got a witch elf hag, she allows you to take a unit of witches as troops. Oh, sorry, as core with dark elves. Or if you're playing goblins, if you've got a goblin chieftain, you can take 0 to 1 of each goblin unit in each category for him. That sort of
mm,
thing.
yeah,
So your army is the list building is very unrestrictive, but it's thought out in a framework where, as long as you stick to your theme, you'll be able to take what you can take. But
yeah,
you won't be able to push stuff out into like these weird, broken, janky lists that you tend to see in some other games, like 40K. I think is probably the biggest
yeah, yeah.
for that. But that's really good. I like that because it means you have a lot of options in your army. You know, you can be writing a list. You could write a list that looks totally different to sort of a very similar, a list written with the same army and the same points value. You go down a different route and go totally different. But then the armies of infamy, which are the kind of alternate army lists, which are like your Legendary Legions, they not only modify the percentage of what you can spend in each section, but they also modify where your units are in each section. So some armies of infamy will say that you can take what might be a rare unit in your core list that might become special, or it might even become core. Depending on how the list functions, or you might get an additional. You might be able to spend 33% of your points on rare, or 50% of your points on rare, instead of the only 25 that you can spend in your Grand Army list. But to do that, you'll then probably lose some options, or you'll have to take X amount of another unit, or there's special rules around that. So even though it changes how the army works quite a lot, it still makes it balanced.
Yeah.
And but you get these really nice themed forces, and that's really cool. I like that. And then you can also ally these forces together in some cases as well. So you can ally. Say Chaos don't have their armies of infamy yet, but they're allowed to ally in their armies of infamy, which I'm assuming will probably be the god focused powers eventually. And Bretonia can ally in their armies of infamy as well. So you can have a Bretonian army led by a Duke from Bretonia, and he can be joined by an ally contingent from the Border Princes.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. So you can have these two armies fighting side by side. They both have to follow their own army list restrictions and army list rules for selecting the army. And it's always been thought out in such a way that it doesn't really seem to break anything. There will almost certainly be some stupid things that people will do eventually.
Yeah.
But it looks like they've put a lot of effort into trying to mediate that to a degree.
I like that.
That's really good. I really like that.
And I like it because obviously number one, it makes obviously the game a lot more balanced, but at the same time as well, the way that they've done it, because it just feels so fluffy.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Like you're saying, like that little thing of being able to take, like, for example, with Beastmen, if you have a Beast Lord as your general, you can take a unit of Bestigors as a core choice.
Yeah.
And which really, that lore wise, that makes sense, because a Beast Lord normally has a contingent of Bestigors with them as kind of their sort of almost like their bodyguard unit. And they always have first pick of all the gear and equipment when they herd comes together before going out to battle or raiding or whatever. So it just little things like that, I think it keeps it balanced, but still adds that flavor, which I think it's
it's really, really good.
I think it's my favorite out of all the GW games. I think that's got to be my favorite sort of list building sort of system.
I agree with you there. Actually, I think it is. I think this is probably the best one we've seen for Games Workshop. I think whoever's written it should be, they should be really proud of themselves, because they've done a really good job. It's like they've taken the best parts of the Warhammer Fantasy system. It's like the best parts of the 8th edition fantasy list building, and then combined it with Lord of the Rings, and then added a bit of their own bits. I don't know if maybe Ancient Battles had something similar. Perhaps, I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's really good, and I think it's going to lead to really diverse armies.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see once everyone's got their armies of infamy out, and once we've got lists for mercenaries as well. So that's something we haven't really sort of talked about yet. Obviously, so no one's seen any rules for mercenaries yet. There are some armies that can take mercenaries from other lists. So you can take like some orcs as mercenaries in a list. Bretonia can take some Empire Knights as mercenaries in their Crusade list. I think I'm trying to think who else has got mercenaries from another list. There's a couple knocking around. But in general, it's just you've got 20% to spend on mercenaries. So at some point, there's going to be a mercenary list coming out, or some mercenaries, which I assume will be the Regiments of Renown, or something very similar to that, or the Dogs of War. Maybe they'll get a Dogs of War book at some point. So that's been really
very cool.
Yeah, that's been really cool to see that, because almost every army can take mercenaries.
Mm.
So that's going to be awesome to see that, just to see these very different units turning up. But then if you take units as mercenaries, they're less reliable because you have the
Yeah.
misbehaving mercenaries. So you have to roll at the start of the game to see what happens, and they
Yeah.
might just not turn up. It's like you've paid them, but they've actually decided, nah, fuck that, and then they'll rock up at some point during the battle, but it might already be too late then.
But it's,
Or they might fight like in uninspired ways. They don't really fancy it that day, or they don't feel like they've been paid enough. So you can kind of expand your list out and maybe buy these mercenaries to cover the weaknesses in your force, but they might not be reliable.
yeah,
So,
and again, I think that's another good sign. Yeah, because it's up to, or at least the one I'm looking at the moment, is up to 20% of your army's points can be spent on mercenaries. So again, it's something that's not gonna supposedly might do, or probably regret these words in months to come, but it's not
3 months
big
plan.
enough to break, a list. But is another way to add a bit more unique individual flavor to your army compared to somebody else's. Choices
Yeah,
for the same race. So yeah,
that's it.
it's fantastic.
It is, yeah, it is fantastic, yeah. And it's just the more of it. I think the when we go into events, the more the variation we see, the better.
Mm.
And it looks like this game so far has been written with that in mind, and we're going to see varied lists from everybody. Like it's possible to see. I think it's going to be possible to see 3 Empire lists turn up to a game, and they'll all be completely different.
Yeah,
And that'll just be great.
yeah,
So
definitely.
that's it's really good. So yeah, going back to the actual gameplay. As I say, it's very reminiscent of the older editions. If you played the older editions, you'll be able to play this. You'll pick it up within a game or two. I played with Zach the other day. So Zach's been playing 8th edition for what, 15 years or something.
Mm.
Maybe more. No, probably possibly more. Yeah, probably about 15 years or so, I think. Um, and he picked it up really quickly. He had a little skim of the rule book, went, oh yeah, cool. And then we played, and yeah, there wasn't any problems. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was really straightforward to pick up. The main differences are obviously the combat, and the magic. So magic obviously completely different to the older editions, but it's very simple.
yeah,
So it's super simple, probably too simple. But it's easy to use, very easy to play. The move phase is very reminiscent of the older editions. Maneuvering is a little bit more complex, and you do need to. That's probably the part of the rules you're going to need to reread the most.
right.
Is the movement phase, because you can read it at first glance and be like, oh yeah, I've got that, but you need to go back and you need to reread it because you will definitely make a mistake and you'll be like, oh shit, I couldn't do that, or oh, I could have done that.
Yeah,
It's very difficult to. You can't. So the main thing that's different to 8th edition is that the sort of the wheel has gone. So in 8th you could just wheel on the spot.
yeah,
That's gone. That's not there anymore.
yeah,
So you have to measure the movement of the models in the units when you turn. And then a turn is a specific maneuver. So if you take a turn, you then can't do a reform. You can't redress the ranks. Swift reform's also gone as well. So you can't blow your trumpet and reform, which does sort of leave musicians in a weird place. I think for some armies,
Mm.
musicians are a little bit redundant now.
They
But
they
that will remain to be seen still. They still give you +1 to your rally test, but I think maybe for the undead, I think musicians might be a bit redundant.
they still give you a plus to being able to march past like close to units, doesn't it?
They do, yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, they do, yeah, and they give you +1 to rally as well.
Mm.
And then you win the combat if you draw. They
Draw.
give you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think for the undead they might be a bit, but I think they're really cheap for the undead as well, so that's probably why. So
Mm.
probably fine. Um, but yeah, they're a little bit less useful than before. But I suppose before they're almost an auto take when you'd sort of take a musician over a standard or a champion in many respects if you only had points for one because they were
Yeah.
just really needed them so you get that swift reform off. So Swift reform's gone. Charging's a little bit different. So charging's a lot So and it's actually a really nice change compared to it. Charging's and I like what they've done because I didn't like the sixth edition one because sixth edition you have the whole you can't measure anything, and if you're really good at eyeballing a range, you would just win because
Yeah.
you if you kind of that tree's work that must be that long, and I fired a cannon last turn, it was that far, so I know my charge is going to be in range, so I'll do it. And it was your charge ranges were all guaranteed. It was just double your move.
Yeah.
Whereas now charging is you roll 2 dice, you pick the highest, and you move that far. But if you go through terrain, you pick the lowest, and then you also take one for your movement. So moving through terrain now is actually terrain makes a big difference to the game.
Yeah.
But the rules are still very simple for it, which is really good. So you can just go, oh, it's terrain. Like terrain. Obviously, that isn't that simple, but it's almost that simple. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's easy to pick up. It's easy to play. There isn't like a weird X rule for this, weird X rule for that, and you have to spend 20 minutes checking that we're both on the same page about what everything is.
Yeah.
Like it's all very easy to. It's very very intuitive.
Yeah.
There is a bit of a weird one about you're supposed to discuss at the start of the game what you're going to count woods as, which I mean, obviously the reasonable thing to do is if you forget to discuss it, you just say they're difficult terrain. But you're supposed to discuss if each section of woods is difficult or dangerous terrain.
Oh, okay.
Or difficult or dangerous, or both, or none. But realistically, it's all going to be difficult. But it would have been quite nice if they just put a little thing in there that said, like, and that's a point that I probably want to come on to actually, is this is definitely a game that's designed for experienced gamers, and it's designed for people with a reasonable attitude. It's not a tournament game.
No.
Like, definitely not. But so the rules are well written, but they're not well laid out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of grey areas. Obviously they do have the standard box out of don't be a moron, be an adult.
Yeah.
About it, which they actually, because they released an FAQ today as well. And in the bottom of the FAQ, there's a box art basically saying that of don't be a moron, be reasonable, come to reasonable agreements, and you do have to do that. But which is good because I think I say it's good. It's good. I know there'll be people go, it's fucking not good. We should play a fucking totally winning game. But it's sort of in a similar vein to Horus Heresy, especially Horus Heresy V1. And there are a lot of bits where you're like, like Horus Heresy V1 pre FAQ anyway. I guess Horus Heresy 2 now, I suppose. Well, there's some bits you like what. But there's a lot of things that just don't have an answer, or they're very vague. But you just have to be reasonable and just be like, yeah, it's obviously that, and then you go with that, Yeah. So there is a bit of that, and the rulebook is pretty badly laid out, especially with so I'd say the main one that annoys me is fleeing from combat. So fleeing from combat is split over 2 different sections of the rulebook.
Lovely.
Yeah, which is a bit annoying because it kind of just stops in one bit, and then you have to go all through to get to the next bit. Which is a bit of a pain. I know why they've done it. It's because they wanted to have the flee rules, obviously, at the first part of the game, where you could flee, which would obviously be normally it's the shooting phase.
Yeah.
So some of the flee rules are there. In fact, they're not. No, they're not. Sorry, they're in the flee bit in the move phase where you can flee from a charge. So they start off there, and then they just stop, and then you have to go to the end of the combat phase to find the rest of them, which is a bit annoying. And it's the same with the unit types. They're split over 2 sections. So there's like a bit of the unit types where you get a brief overview and then it just stops. And then you have to find the rest somewhere else. And then the rules for characters are kind of split everywhere. There's rules for characters in bits where you wouldn't expect to find that rule. It's just kind of there, which is fine if you found it and you've read it. But it's a bit annoying when you're like, because we've been trying to, especially in our larger games, we've been like going, I think that's it, but we'll just check it. Even if we know it is, we'll check it to find where the rule is.
Yeah.
We know where it is, and I've been trying to write stuff down and just write down page numbers so I can sort of help people out because there's quite a lot of people I've got to teach the game to in a couple of weeks. So I'm trying to get page numbers written down because I've had quite, there's quite a lot of people who are building armies now. They've never played fantasy before, and they said to me, "Oh, you'll be able to teach me how to play, won't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So I've kind of tried to make notes and stuff so I can answer their questions when they say, "Oh, can I do this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know actually." But a lot of that split over a lot of pages, and it's bloody annoying trying to find it or just trying to find where a rule was because you're like, I've definitely seen that rule, but where is it? This is a
Yeah.
rule about, for instance, a rule about lone characters. So if you're a lone character and you're not a monster, you become a skirmisher.
Right.
But the rule for that isn't under lone characters.
Of course.
No, it's under another part of the character rules. Um,
Why wouldn't it be?
yeah, it's like it's fine because all the rules are there, but they're not easy to find when you need to look them up. Or
Yeah.
there's about open order units that split around a couple of different places as well. And it can be a little bit annoying when you're trying to find something in the game. So once you've learned it all, it'll be all right. But when you're trying to find it, it's a bit difficult. So you do need to kind of check stuff. And but again, it's about being reasonable. It's about just yeah, just being reasonable when you're playing the game and not being like. But I think that part of that comes though. It's kind of that almost antithesis to a game maybe like 40k or Kings of War, where instead of everything being super tight and there's no room for like those fun little encounters and stuff, and there's no room for options, it's like super tight. You must do this, you must do this, you must do this, and we can't break the game because it's well written. It's like, yeah, that's great, but also it's not fun.
Yeah.
So they've gone the other way. It is written like an old school game, like an older it's the older way of doing things in many ways, which does make it a bit difficult to find things. And it
Yeah.
does mean that things are set out a little bit weirdly and they are really hard to find, and it does annoy the fuck out of you.
It does. It
But
does seem to be that initial thoughts anyway that you're going to have 40k and Age of Sigmar, which is going to be games if you want to do maybe more competitive tournament style games, and then Horus Heresy and Old World, which are going to be a more like narrative driven, fluffy style game. Obviously, you could do either way if you really wanted to, but that kind of to me feels like the direction it's kind of
yeah,
going.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you are right there, and I think that's probably what they're doing. And
Mm,
they're probably trying. I think they want to market Horus Heresy in Old World. I mean, that's from what I see, they're marketing Horus Heresy in Old World to older players.
yeah,
So they're adding it to people who are older. They probably are a lot more reasonable, and they're more interested in going down and having a narrative gaming experience and telling a story and having a good laugh, as
yeah,
opposed to smashing their opponent's face in.
yeah,
Um, because yeah, if you really went into this edition of fantasy with that attitude, you could break the game definitely.
yeah.
And there's a lot of answers. There's a lot of answers to questions you just don't have. And let's say some of the stuff in the FAQ, you only have to read it, and you're like, whoa. Like it's
Yeah.
stuff that you probably wouldn't even think of, but if you were there trying to game it for a tournament, you'd be like, "Fuck you now." So it's there, and there's a couple of things that definitely haven't been answered that are still a bit like, all right, but it's
I
yeah,
think
no,
I
gone.
think a little bit of it's also sort of that mindset of that split between those sort of styles of games is
Mm.
even sort of starting to show a bit. Obviously, I haven't been through the entire range, but looking on the web store for Games Workshop, the uh, Horus Heresy and the Old World stuff seems to have more of these expert levels kits. Where it says on there that
Yeah, yeah,
you need
yeah.
to be experienced at building kits to do these sort of things. Whereas like quite a lot of the Age of Sigmar and the 40k ones seem to be these. They don't have that title on there. So I think that's maybe another indication as to the direction as well. Might be reading into it a lot more with my own personal biases, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you could be right there. Yeah. 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 The only other thing I'd say on that is it seems like War Machines are missing a page of rules as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like it seems like they've just yeah, it's really odd. Their rules don't yeah.
What?
Um it literally just seems like there should be another page somewhere for War Machine rules and there isn't. Like,
What
so
would you expect to see on this
I would
other
expect to
page?
see another page that says that war machines can't charge. It says what will happen when war machines panic.
Okay,
What
yeah,
happens when war machines break,
right.
uh, and that just doesn't seem to exist.
Okay. I have to
So
admit I haven't really looked at War Machines.
yeah,
These men don't tend to have many.
no, that doesn't. Yeah, that just doesn't seem to be a thing. Which is odd. And we've looked for it. I mean, if anyone's found it, they just call me a fucking moron. But I've looked in detail for it, and I can't find it, and neither can anyone else I've asked.
Hmm.
Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we're pretty yeah." Like, "Oh no, war machines can't do that, or they do this, don't they?" And then we try and find it, and we're like, "Huh."
Well, I'll be damned.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be there. It's literally like they've. It feels like there should be another page after where the war machine rules end, and it's not there.
Okay.
So every category of rules, and this is brilliant as well. This is really good. Obviously, I know I've just said there's some stuff that's not great. But obviously that's me being, I'm just trying to give like a pro and con. Overall, it's all really good.
Yeah.
But this is a really good thing they've done, and they have an oddball stuff section after every rule.
Yeah,
After
I've
every rule
noticed that.
section, and that's so good. And it
Mm.
just clears up little bits and pieces. Like, oh, what happens if this happens? And they aren't. It's like they've like pre-prepared for an FAQ sort of thing. And obviously
Mm.
stuff gets through, and you do need an FAQ, and that's the way it is. um, but yeah, like it's just really cool to have that little section in there to be like, oh, this is what you need to do when in this weird circumstance. Because the weird circumstances do come up. It does happen. You get these little things, and they just explain how that works, like how two rules may interact with each other, how you might order something. Yeah, and that's really good. But the War Machine section doesn't have that. And
Yeah.
that's why I think that's missing. I wonder if maybe there was supposed to be a page there, didn't get printed. What's I meant?
Yeah, quite possibly.
Because it's weird that that's not there. Because
It's weird.
everything else in that regard is quite tight. Like they
Mm.
seem to cover how most other things works, but not that.
Yeah, it seems weird as well that they, if it's quite like, the stuff you listed off seemed quite big core things that
Mm.
you'd need to know, and it wasn't in the FAQ that released today.
Well, that's it. Yeah, it felt like it's stuff that we expected, we took for granted, and then we're like, actually, because we were like, oh well, what happens when a war machine does panic, or what happens when a war machine goes impetuous?
Mm.
Because there's a spell that causes every unit within 12 to become impetuous if they pass the leadership test. So
Hmm.
we were like, oh, what happens with that? And we're like,
I imagine the knee-jerk reaction to that when that first came up was, "Oh, well, they can't be affected because they can't charge," and then went, "Oh, well, there's nothing to say that they can't charge."
yeah, because there's nothing to say that you can't declare a charge. It, yeah, because
Mm.
you can declare a charge even if you can't make a charge, even if you can't actually make a charge move,
Yeah.
which is interesting, and that's specifically stated. So it's weird.
Mm.
But obviously, like if I have missed it and there is a bit saying it, just spelling it out in cold hard letters, then sick. Um, but I can't see it anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, and panicking as well because when they panicked, they used to just sit under the war machine. In effect, they'd be pinned,
Right.
but that's gone now. So we played a game yesterday, and Connor lost a ton of his artillery to panic. Um, just ran away, and we were
Oh.
like, what? We were like, oh, they must have sit under their war machine like normal. And then we're like, wait, hang on. And we looked. We had three people with three rule books looking for it, and we're like, can't find it.
Oh. Oh
Um,
dear.
Yeah, so yeah, cascading panic's a bit different now as well. It's a bit different to the other editions. With how when stuff breaks and what gets panicked by it, and how that, what they panic, that sort of thing. So that's a little bit different as well. There's nothing bad about it at all. Fear and terror have changed quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
Fear's very all or nothing. We found. So
Mm.
fear seems to be it's really good if you outnumber the enemy, and it's useless if you don't.
Yeah.
Terra's really good though. So Terra's it's different to what it was, but it's very, very good.
Mm.
So because it's one of the few things that modifies leaderships, your actual leadership value in a combat.
Yeah.
So that's really hard to come by. So that's decent. So you're increasing chance someone just breaking and fleeing. And being able to just force a panic check or a break test, or it's actually a terror test specifically. So in effect, it's a break test, but you can't re-roll it with your BSB.
Mm.
Or with veteran, I believe as well. I don't think veterans can either, which is I have to check that. It might be able to. But yeah, so that's quite good. So you've got yeah, that's another thing actually. BSBs are way less useful as well.
I was going to. I was holding my
You're
tongue
holding your
on that
tongue.
one.
You're ready to be
And I
like
was
BSBs. Yeah, they're nowhere near as auto include as they were in the older editions.
so now editions they allow you to re-roll break tests, isn't it? Within 12,
Break and panic within their command range, which is 12,
but not leadership checks.
but not leadership checks,
Okay.
and not terror checks, and not fear tests.
But they still give you the +1 in combat.
Yeah, you get +1 combat resolution for having. Yeah.
So yeah, so they're not auto include for a lot of armies, I
No,
imagine.
they're not. No, they look like they're still going to be an auto include for the undead. Because for the undead, you get reroll leadership and they reduce your crumble value by D3.
Yeah, I have seen
So
that. Yeah.
that's really good.
Mm.
But for other factions, I think they're less of an auto take. But on the other side of that coin, BSBs can now be equipped like anyone else can be equipped. So they gain all their magic item total, and they can take a magic banner if they want.
Yeah.
So for most armies, you pay 25 extra points given the battle standard bearer, and that's it. You
Yeah.
can have a dude who's equipped with whatever you like. So he's still, he's still a character with a load of items, and he's got a flag, but that flag doesn't impede his ability to fight.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously in eighth, there was quite a lot of variation in what units could take.
Yeah.
Like some battle standard bearers had all the options; they could take everything. There was no issues. And other ones, if they took a battle standard, they couldn't take this, they couldn't take that, or they could, if they took a magic standard, they couldn't take anything else. That sort of thing. So that's been kind of flattened now, or from what I've seen, anyway, from all the lists that I've looked at. I haven't looked at all the PDF lists yet. I don't know if any of those have changed. Doesn't look like it, but yeah, it seems like battle standard bearers now they're just a dude with a flag as an additional piece of war gear. So that's
Yeah.
cool. So they don't impede you, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not sure they're an auto take in every army now.
Mm.
But for 25 points, they're still pretty good. Like can't complain with 25 points.
Yeah. I think it's the I think it's going to be a case of sort of whether you need it to fulfill a specific role within your army to
Yeah,
to buff
that's it. Yeah,
something in
yeah,
particular. Because I think now that they do have all of the normal options and having the banner doesn't stop them from being that character.
mm,
You pay your 25 points, yeah, but then all of a sudden that's sort of like opening up a new sink of points into all the different equipment you can get and the magical banners and
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
all of a sudden you've
It's more
spent like
options.
300 points on a banner pair and you're like, oh, okay, actually I could have done with this other unit
And he
instead.
gets blown below by a chaos spawn, and you're like, ah.
Yeah.
But no, that's I think in all it's a good change actually because he's not auto include. Like you say, he's got all these options, and you can end up spending a ton of points on him,
Yeah.
or just not at all. Like it again, it's granularity. You're
Yeah.
not just going to see every list battle standard bearer, battle standard bearer, battle standard bearer.
Yeah.
It's different now. There's
And
yeah, go on.
and I think another thing that feeds into that is that I've noticed far more units can take magical banners now.
They can, yeah. That seems to have increased as well. Because yeah, in eighth there was a couple of armies where they could just give magic banners, like elves. Yeah, well, mainly elves, I suppose.
Of course.
Right, yeah. Was just like, oh, here's a magic standard on the unit, way! And then other armies it was like, no magic standards for you.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's tends to be, as a general rule, most armies can take a magic standard on one of like a sort of core unit per 1,000 or per army. And then most of the elite units can take magic standards as well. And then the more elite that unit is, the higher their allowance is normally of what they can spend on magic standards. So yeah, there's a lot more options for magic standards. And there's actually a lot less magic standards rolling around now. So there's probably more units that can take them than there are actually available magic standards. um
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah, it's nice to see it be, see some options for putting magic stands doing stuff. So yeah, it's just following that theme of there's more options, there's more space to do stuff with.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, it's like, you can really make your army your army,
Mm.
which is, yeah, it's really cool. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to pick up orcs and goblins, and you're playing the exact same list as somebody else. It's going to
Yeah.
be a different list because you're going to be like, oh, I want to take that, I want to take that, and so that is actually brings us to another really awesome change, which I love. Again, I think it's such a good idea. Is the extremely common magic items. So in every edition of
Mhm.
Fantasy, you've had the magic items and the common magic items. So magic items, you book magic items, and you had the rulebook magic items, which refers to as common magic items.
Yeah.
So now you have extremely common magic items, and they're split between the rulebook and between your army list and any infamy lists you'll have, and they're marked with an asterisk. And
Yeah.
if you've got a magic item with an asterisk, you can take as many of them as you like. So, arm shields, you can take, if you've got characters for them, you can take 20 of them if you want. And also, a character, it also doesn't stop you from taking another item in that same category.
Yeah.
So you could take, so a lot of time in the old editions, you'd have those little enchanted items, wouldn't you? That were just, they were cool, but you just never take them because you were like, well, if I take that, I can't take this.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take, like, I don't know, this, like, a potion. Like, you didn't see a lot of potions, did you? But occasionally,
No.
but not that much. You might see him in, like a Pegasus Knight might take one occasionally just to get him to boost his initiative up a little bit.
And
Um,
sometimes it would be just if you had like, yeah, it was be one of the cheaper potions as well, because it'd be like, oh well, I've got like 5 points left, or
yeah.
you know.
But yeah, that's it. Yeah, you say, oh, I've got the points, I'll take it. Fuck it. But now you can take as many potions as you like. You can only drink one a turn, but as long as you've got the points allowance for it, you can just take them.
Yeah.
And you can take multiple versions of that potion across the army, or even on a dude. So a dude could take 6 potions of. I don't know if he could take 6 potions of strength. It's probably too many points. But in theory, you could take, like, say 3. You could take 3 potions of strength. So that'd be pretty cool. Or what
Mm.
Connor's been doing recently is taking like 3 enchanted shields on his on his hero. So there's dudes rolling around with 3 enchanted shields just because each one gives them a 1 use only 5-up ward save. But that's really cool. That you can kind of that's almost kind of, you can easily narrative that of either the hilarious option if he's got like some attendant running around after him with a bag of shields, and he's like, "My lord," and throws him a shield, which is actually great and probably what's
Yeah.
actually on this Warhammer and its stuff. But you
Yeah.
could say, like, this, he's like enchanted his shield to such a degree that it's got a few uses in it.
Yeah.
And eventually it's obviously he's run out and it's fucked. But
No,
yeah,
I like the first option. That's
I
far
I
more fun
I
to
like
type
it.
in.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, and it just adds to that kind of that, and it means that you can kind of it's almost like taking a kind of variable ward save. You're like, oh, I've
Mm.
got this many points, and the Assyrian Amulet's another example of that. Assyrian Amulet, Assyrian Lodestone, I think it is. They've changed the name of it slightly. It's so it used to be the, is it the Assyrian? Oh, let me check the book. So I just want to make sure I get the name right.
They have changed a lot of names, which is quite,
They have, yeah. The Giant Blade and the Ogre Blade have swapped around, which is weird. The Ogre Blade's
yeah.
now bigger and better than the Giant Blade, which is a bit weird, but yeah.
The other one that I noticed, which was quite funny, was for
Mm,
Beastmen, and the champion of a gore herd used
mm.
to be called a foe render,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's now a special rule for Beastmen. So they've now changed the
Oh.
champion's name to being called a true horn.
Mm.
It's like, why have you done that? But okay.
Yeah, they've done it on the Knights around the Knights Errant actually. The Knight Errant hero used to be called a Cavalier, and he's called a Gallant now. So the Knight of the Realm hero that was called a Gallant is now called a First Knight. So change that a little bit. But yeah, it is the Obsidian Lodestone, yeah. So the
Right.
Obsidian Lodestone, it's an extra con magic item,
Mm.
but it then has so most of these ones are single use as well, these items. Not all of them though. So some have stacking effects and some are single use. So the
Right.
Obsidian Lodestone, although it's extra common, you're limited to only being able to take a max of 3 on a single character. But for each one you get, you increase your magic resistance by 1, up to a maximum of 3.
Okay.
So you can kind of, you can have someone rolling around with 3 lodestones. just to give them magic resistance -3 if you want it, or luck stones. So you can take as many luck stones as you like. They're 15 points each, and each one of them is a single use and lets you reroll a failed armor save.
That's cool.
So you could give character 2 luck stones, give them 2 rerollable armor saves. Which is it's quite cool. You know, it's just that granularity again and those options. And people are going to
Yeah.
build into that. And I think as it goes on, you'll see these really weird equipment options.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I've combined this, and I've got this many use to this. And that's really cool. I like that. So yeah, it's sweet. Yeah. But anyway, yes, that's. First, we're talking a lot about army building, aren't we? But I suppose that's a lot of stuff that's changed a lot. But it's really good though, just having those options in the army building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see actually I've seen now the PDFs have come out. I've had a little look at some of them. I've looked at the Dark Elf one, and I've looked at the Undead one, and they both look really good.
Yeah.
Like, they look, they obviously put some effort into them. It's a lot of stuff you see on first glance. You think, oh, is that right? And then actually you're like, no, yeah, it is, because you think, oh yeah, that's how that works. Yeah, it's good. It's the whole army building section, as it were, of the game seems to have had a lot of time put into it.
Yeah.
Which is good, which means the games on the board are, they're more varied, they're more fun, they're different. So yeah.
Yeah. Obviously that's one part of the game I've been able to have a bit of a look at, and yeah, I completely agree. I think the whole army building section, from how you choose what units to what you can give them, to the different magical items and whatnot that you can do, and how those work. I think it's all very well thought out, and just really lends itself, as you say, to adding that individuality and uniqueness to your force, that helps you tell the narrative of why your army's there doing what it's doing, and whether like you're saying with the whole enchanted shields thing, that whether that is like you've got some character that you've built that's going to have this lore filled reason as to why they've got this amazing shield that has these charges, if you like, to be able to use, or whether it is something a bit more tongue in cheek with, and a bit more like Monty Python, where you've got like a little attendant that's running around with a bag of shields, like, here you go, my lord.
Yeah, it's like, shield, Cuthbert, shield. So like throws him another one. Like,
Yeah.
it like blows a cannonball out of the way, and he's like, Cuthbert, shield.
But yeah, it's it just really does lend itself and lead really into that sort of narrative style of gameplay, which I think's just fantastic. It's, right up my street.
Right up your rally.
Yeah, go right in my
Yeah.
basket.
Oh yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, it's just cool. So from the games I've played, obviously, I've played 3 games against Warriors of Chaos. I've played 1 game against Empire.
Yeah.
And I've played 1 game against High Elves. So I've got kind of I've not experienced every other army on the table yet. I'm
Yeah.
playing against Undead on Friday,
Ooh.
which should be cool. And that's the Vampires Undead, not the Tomb Kings.
Right.
I'm playing against Tomb Kings next week at some point, which would be good. But yeah, I'm playing against Vampires. But so from what I've seen, sort of what the experience I've had of the other armies, I won't really comment on the armies I've not played yet, because I or played against yet, because obviously you can read it in the book, and then you actually play on the table, and it's quite different.
Yeah.
My worries to begin with, actually, with Bretonia were going to be really strong.
Mm.
And the first game I played, I felt like they were overpowered as fuck, and I was a little bit worried about that. I thought, ooh, because
Yeah.
I was a bit, I don't want to play an overpowered army, because they do seem, you sort of look at some of the stuff and you think they almost seem to be the Imperial Fists of, in many ways, they're the Imperial Fists of fantasy, because they're the poster boys
Yeah.
suddenly. You're like, oh no, if they put all the rules into these, are they just too good? But that, I don't think that's actually the case. So from the more we've played, the less it seemed like they are. You actually see other things. You're, oh yeah, no, actually that's as good as that. That's better than that. So I thought that, because the Duke, obviously, from the so we'll sort of read out the Duke's stat line. So for anyone that doesn't actually play this game yet, you're just looking to get into it. Sorry, this probably won't make that much sense to you. So the Duke's stat line is so he's 175 points. He's a lot of points.
Yep.
By the time you've given him upgrades and magic items, he's over 300 normally. So he's pretty expensive. But he's weapon skill 7, ballistic skill 3, which is irrelevant.
Yeah.
He's strength 5, toughness
Mm.
4, wounds 4, initiative 5, attacks 5, leadership 9. So he's got a pretty hefty stat line.
Mm.
He can also he also comes with the Grail Vow, which means he's immune to psychology, and all of his attacks are magical. So he just backhands ghosts, with his. They get his ring hand, like bam. And he's also got Rallying Cry and Blessing of the Ladies. Blessing of the Lady is your 6-up ward or your 5. Oh, once you've got the Grail Vow, he always gets the blessing as well. So even if you don't pray, he still gets the blessing.
Brilliant.
So he has a 6-up ward against strength 4 and less, and a 5-up ward against strength 5 and more. So he's all right, he's pretty good. And then you can give him bits and pieces. So I was a bit like, oh, he's pretty good. And I've been running one. So I've played the same list every game with, then the 2.5K ones. I just added some stuff to it. So I've been playing my Duke. He's the same Duke I've been using for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So I've been playing him with the Heartwood Lance, which gives him +3 strength and AP on the charge.
Right.
And then I'd say on the charge he's strength 8. Then I've been playing him with the Virtue of the Joust, which gives him a reroll to wound on any rolls to wound when charging. With a lance, so he's wounding pretty much everything on 2s with a reroll.
14.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then he's got the Gromwell Great Helm, which gives him a 2-up rerollable armor save, which is pretty nice. And then a Barded Warhorse as well. So yeah, he's pretty hard. And yeah, and then you combine him with the Prophetess, well, and I think the Prophetesses now for returning, they're probably one of the best units in the game now, I think. Again, I could be wrong. There might be better stuff, but they're really good because they're a real buff character.
Right.
They give with the Law of the Lady, which is your oh sorry, he's got a shield as well, so he gets his 2-up save because Gromwell Great Helm will make him a 3-up, and then he gets 2-up with a shield. But the so the Law of the Lady, it's got some really nice spells in it. But it's got one called the Lady's Wrath, which is range self, and it remains in play as well, which makes it really good. Because you can't cast enchantments when you're in combat, but she can just cast it turn 1, and then in your command phase, and then she charges in, and you still got it on. So her and her unit all gain +1 strength and AP to them and their mounts. So then the Duke is then strength 9 on the charge, and AP -4.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the Knights of the Realm that they're with are strength 6 and AP -3, with a possible -4 if they roll a 6 to wounds and got armor bane.
My gauze with additional hand weapons laugh at you. What is this?
Yeah, what is armor? Yeah. And then all the Warhorses are strength 4 with -1 AP as well. So it's that together. So I've been playing him with a Prophetess with that spell, and then with some other spells. She's also got Oaken Shield, which gives she can give her unit a 5-up ward.
Nice.
And then Arrow Attraction and Arcane Urgency as well, which Arcane Urgency is actually really good. It lets your unit move again. So if her unit isn't in combat, it can be really handy to get out of the way or just to reform.
Yeah.
Or to set yourself for another charge. Or to make another unit quite quick. I've been throwing it on battle pilgrims quite a lot to get them at the table really quick. Just to get them
You
to.
bad man.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, just get them to run at something, and then you ping them. So with Arcane Urgency, they're going 16 at the table. Like so. There's this block of dudes with the chair.
I just got an image of these pilgrims with their chair, just sort of suddenly as if somebody's pressed fast forward on the VHS and the Benny Hill theme tune comes on.
So yeah, I've been playing her and him in a unit of 12 Knights of the Realm. And then the Knights of the Realm have had the Antlers of the Great Hunt on the on the first night, which lets them ignore the penalty for moving through woods. And they get to reroll dangerous terrain test, which is so good.
I think that's got to be the most ridiculous one I've heard yet. It's antlers helping you go through woods quicker. Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
they're good antlers. For that little block there, the first game I played, that seemed insane. The second game I played, it seemed really, really good. The third game I played, it seemed really, really good. But then after that, it seemed to kind of grind to a halt a bit because it's like because obviously I've been playing with Ollie, Connor, and Zach,
Yeah,
and it's more okay. I think obviously now people have seen it because I think a lot of it's people have been used to Bretonia being a very set play style, being a little bit weak in the past because they're such an old book and they're considered quite weak. I don't actually think they've been bad in eighth. I think they're quite good.
Mm.
I don't think they're a bad army in eighth at all. But I don't know, maybe people are used to me playing in a very specific play style, and now it's changed a little bit. They're like, fuck it out. But after those couple of games, it seemed to grind to a halt, and then it's like, oh yeah, I can deal with this. Like they learn, people being, oh yeah, I can deal with the lance by charging with infantry, and then it's fucked. You
yeah,
suddenly lance formation that goes down. Or like getting a character in that can just ruin the Duke, because the Duke's got quite a low initiative. He's an initiative 5. So another character, once the charge is blunted, another character will hit before him, like a Grandmaster from the Empire is initiative 6, so he'll hit first. Or any of the High Elf
Mhm.
heroes, they're initiative 7 normally, and the High Elf Lords are also always strikes first.
Right.
So they'll be hitting first against him as well, that sort of thing. And he's not that great defensively. He's okay, but he's not at the level of a Chaos Lord.
Right.
Uh, there's a theme here, isn't there? Of not as good as a Chaos Lord. Because a Chaos Lord Chaos Lord's really, really good. And they'll just
Yeah.
go around kicking you in. So it's been, I don't think they're as strong as I previously thought they might be. So I'm hoping that's the case. So I don't be playing
Still,
with a powered
it's not
army.
a
But still,
pushover.
no, 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 no. I mean, I think Bretonia they're really good. I think Bretonia are strong, but I'm less of the opinion that they're overpowered now, which
Yeah,
is good. 'Cause I was very seeing all the previews and reading the books before I played. See it when we got all the digital versions.
yeah,
Reading those and then reading it in the flesh, I was like, "Ooh, Bretonia seemed pretty strong." And I was kind of like these. Yeah, I'd say it seemed like they were the Imperial Fists of fantasy, and I was like, this seems very, very powerful.
yeah. I
Uh,
think over the next sort of 6 months to a year, I think we're gonna find this. We're gonna look at stuff and go, "Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous! How could this is just gonna absolutely wipe the floor with anybody it faced against." And then after people have played it a few games, go, "Oh, okay. Actually, if I do this and this, it's
yeah.
not that bad. It can be halted or it can be countered this way." And I think that will have with the way that they're going to be releasing these arcane journals with the infamy list. I think that's going to add an extra sort of level of difference to it. So we're going to see a couple of versions, I think, of this where something will come out and be like, oh, actually, that looks a bit too much, and then sort of people have a handful of games against it, and then go, oh, okay, yeah, I think I can see how I can get around this, or what I need to do to try and sort of limit the effectiveness of that particular combination.
Mm.
Which again is I just think it's an interesting part of the game, as long as there isn't something that comes along which is straight up, there is no way around this. This is just gonna put you in the ground, and you may as well just pack up before you've even deployed. I think it's quite an interesting thing and adds another level, of strategy to the game of thinking around these things.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. Yeah, but it might. Yeah, so I think as time goes on, um, those things will come and go,
Yeah,
and it's going to be probably at least a year until stuff sort of gets ironed out, isn't it?
yeah, and obviously if the game keeps up the amount of attention and hype that the community's giving it, been given it over. I know it's obviously going to be bigger at the beginning when it's all brand new and everybody wants it, and especially if there's troubles getting hands on stuff. Um, but I think if the momentum keeps up, then next year we could be looking at maybe new armies coming in, or maybe even if it is really that good, maybe in the future we'll even see some of these legacy ones that they said, no, never. Maybe they will get
Oh
pulled back
yeah,
in.
I reckon. Well, that's something worth talking about. I reckon 'cause I think I know you don't say they said no, never. I think if the sales are good for those armies, if we suddenly see sales in those armies go up, I think they'll go, oh yeah, go on then.
Yeah,
'Cause at the end of the game's works as a business, they want to sell
yeah,
people models, and if they see stuff selling, they'll go, yeah, sweet, we're gonna try and sell more of that.
yeah. If all of a sudden there's a load of people buying all of the vampire count models, but they're not seeing an increase of players in the tournament scene for Soulblight
Whatever.
Gravelords in AOS, then that kind of is quite
Well,
obviously that people are buying it for Old World.
I don't necessarily think even in that regard, 'cause I don't think the tournament players or whatnot necessarily make a difference to I don't think they really represent the demographics of people that are just purchasing the purchasing things from
No,
Games Workshop.
what I mean by that
Yeah,
is that obviously, like if for example, if somebody was to go out and buy a box of the Fire Slayer dwarves, then Games Workshop, that's obviously for Age of Sigmar. Whereas some of obviously the legacy armies, they have Age of Sigmar armies, but not a line for Old World. So if what I'm saying is if all of a sudden like vampire counts, for example, who are an Age of Sigmar army, loads of people suddenly start buying more of their models, but they're not seeing more people playing that army in Age of Sigmar. It kind of
I don't know. No,
alludes to the fact that it's being used for Old World.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think the tournament data is something that necessarily be looked at. I think it would be more that they just see sales suddenly go up now that old world rules are out.
Mm. Uh, Yeah, hope, but yeah, either way, that's the hope, isn't it? That more and more will become available you know,
Yeah, in
in
the
Old
future.
World.
Yeah, and I would be surprised that didn't eventually happen.
Mm.
I could be wrong, but yeah, be surprised. I'd be
Yeah,
shocked. Yes. 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 Yes.
so
But,
I think at the moment that's kind of the two major points of contention with the community is one. There's quite a lot of people, that are initially upset that their army's a legacy, but then when people point out, well, actually, independent tournament, you know, runners, organisers are still going to allow you to use them. It's just the GW official events that aren't going to be using it. Then yeah, that sort of kind of answers that. But yeah,
yeah.
so I still get it that it'd be nice that they were fully supported within the game and a part of the storyline and the lore that will be putting forward in future campaign books or however they release future content for Old World.
Mm.
And then I think the other sort of main one at the moment, which again is kind of a temporary one, is obviously all the upheaval about the pre-orders and people getting their hands on stock and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think apart from that, it all seems to have been quite positive,
Mm.
which is brilliant.
Bloody great, that is, yeah. Bloody great.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's your plan for your first army with your Beastman? You think you're gonna play then?
Oh, I'm still fiddling around in my head with how things. I need to, because I've got kind of in a way I've got access to more stuff with Beastmen now than I did before. Even okay, I've got new units that I couldn't take before, like the Dragon Ogres and the
Yeah.
Cockatrice and stuff.
Mm.
Like on top of that, because they've changed where you can spend your points with certain units. Like for example, Razor Gores, they used to be a special choice. They're now a core choice.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, so it's like, oh, actually, I can take them as a thing, and and the changes to the Ungor rules. It's like, oh, actually, they have a place in an army now. Like, I might actually want to use them instead of Gors.
Yeah. The Ungor Scouts, or the Ungor Scouts, the ones with the bows, they're like not completely useless now, are they?
Well, yeah, the Ungor scouts, I think they're a point or even 2 points each cheaper,
Yeah, so
which
that's
is
so you
which is
used to
cool.
go,
But
oh, I'll play those, yeah, because you really wanted some of those, didn't you? And then you were just like, I just can't. You were like, there's no reason to have these.
yeah, well, yeah, especially the Ungor with close combat weapons. It's like I for the price of them, I may as well just take Gors because they're better in every way.
Yeah,
Whereas now I could take a unit of Ungor with spears and shields, and I think that works out with a spear and a shield. That's 6 points a model, and they've got a pretty average across the board stat line with good movement. As you say, they've got skirmish and they can move through cover. And then on top of that, they've got the chariot runners rule. So now they can become like a moving screen for chariot,
yeah.
which is a really cool idea. And it really gives them a place in the army.
Like
Yeah,
Chariot Runners is, I think, one of the coolest rules they've brought in. So if
yeah,
you're a player of the older editions and you don't know what the Chariot Runner rule does, I'll just read it out. So I've got the book in front of me. So Chariot Runners, friendly models whose troop type is Chariot can draw a line of sight over or through models with this special rule and can move through friendly units of Chariot Runners that are in skirmish formation. If the chariot's move would result in it ending on top of a chariot runner, simply nudge the chariot runner aside by the smallest amount possible to make space for the chariot. While in skirmish formation, units of chariot runners can treat friendly chariots that are within 1 inch of one or more of this unit's models as part of the unit for purposes of unit coherency, which is really, really good.
yeah.
Like, it just opens up so many options. I mean, for you, like, how are you gonna like play that? Like, what's your sort of think? Oh, what am I gonna do with that?
So my thoughts with that is to have a fair size, probably about 20 guys in skirmish formations, so they're quite spread out,
Mm.
with a couple of Tuskor chariots behind them, and they'll act as the screen for the chariots because the chariots can move and charge through them. But equally, if the Ungor take a charge, then the chariots can then charge through them to get into the sort of the juicy parts of the unit's charge. So I think
Yeah.
if I take, maybe maybe a character or something that I could put with them that would give them something like stubborn, that would help them take that initial hit, that charge into them, and then the chariots come in because they are really good on the charge, and they'll help decimate whatever's gone into them.
Yeah. And that's like exactly how you see Beastmen using Ungors as well, isn't it? Like how you sort of imagine them to use it.
Yeah, because the Ungors are sort of meant to be the runts, and they're the closest to the human looking, and generally have quite small horns, so they're kind of
Mm.
treated really badly by the rest of the sort of beastmen. Not sure if species is quite the word, but they are absolutely the most hated.
Yeah,
So
they're just a chaff, aren't they, really? That's sort of thrown into the grinder.
yeah, which is funny because they're the ones that actually probably have the most craftsmanship skills out of all of the beastmen as well. So it's them that actually amends armor for the bigger races and stuff. But they are treated like crappy slaves, and they are the scum beneath the hooves of the rest of the
Yeah.
beastmen. So
All the
that, like, the
chariot
idea.
wings, those guys.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea that the chariots are sort of using these these poor Ungor as a literal sort of meat shield, and then like when something interesting comes along that they want to charge, it's like, well, I'm not waiting for you to get out of the way. I'm coming through. You move or else, because it is the point that it's the chariot runners unit that has to move to make way for the chariot. So it just really sort of feels quite fluffy at that
Yeah.
point. But yeah, it's the other sort of new addition that they've got is the access to a Centaur chieftain, which
Yeah.
didn't have before. Like, there's nothing too spectacular, but it's just cool that you can now take a Centaur character as a leader within the Bray herd, as it were. But yeah, just again, it's just giving more options, and yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, it's based on what I've got at the moment. I think would probably be maybe looking at maybe a big blob of gauze, and then some Vestigore, and the chariots around it with Cygor at the back and lobbing his rocks. And sort of go from there. But I think part of my problem is I need to sort of sit down and look at the characters and work out what do I need each character and then specifically take equipment and magical items and stuff specifically around that, so that I'm not trying to have like a jack of all trades character, because I don't think that will work as well in this edition.
Oh, okay. So you're going to try and sort of focus him to complete like a certain task. You're going to be like, right, this guy's going to go and bash in carrots, so I'm going to give him this.
Yeah, like for example, if I was worried about a heavily armored unit, say like one of your fancy blocks of knights, maybe I have a look and think, okay, well, the beastmen have a access to the law of beast magic, so maybe take a Bray Shaman and give him Viletide, which does 5d6 strength 1 hits with no armor saves permitted. And then there's I think it's called the Hag Tree Fetish magic item that you can give them, which allows you to re-roll any failed wound rolls from magic missile spells.
Ooh.
It's like, okay, yeah, I'm hitting on 6s, but I'm then re-rolling all of these 5d6 that haven't hit, and it's like, okay, you're only going to be able to take ward and regeneration saves on this, so all of a sudden, these big armored knights are getting taken down by somebody throwing maggots at them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But that sort of thing, like you can take that, because that affects all magic missiles. So maybe I take a Bray Shaman that's just got a lot of magic missile style attacks to make the most of that Hag Tree Fetish, and sort of base that around that, and maybe take. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many magic missile things can you get on a Bray Shaman? Can you take a few?
Well, there's two in Law of Beasts that you can take. You've got the Viletide one, and then you've also got Devolve, which is the
Devolve's a magic. I thought it was a hex. That's good,
no,
isn't
it's
it?
magic missile. So
Yeah. You just lose wounds as well. Devolve's just no fucking
Yeah.
saves, isn't it? It's just gone, lose wounds.
And then the magic laws that the Beastmen have access
Dark?
to is Dark, Demonology, and Elemental.
Because Dark's got Doombolt in it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a few different ones, across those three that you can
that'd
sort
be
of add to it.
You could almost have quite a shooty little beast, couldn't you?
Yeah, and if you really wanted to, obviously whatever you roll, you can swap one of the rolls or two of the rolls for the Law of Beasts spells, and then equally you could take that.
No, you can take.
Familiar?
Oh yeah, to take two different laws.
Yeah, and then you're sort of aiming for the missile.
I don't know if
spells
you
on
can
them.
take two different. You can't take two different signatures though. I don't think. I think you still only allow one signature max, so you can still only have one of the two out of beasts, and then that will be it.
Oh, okay.
But still, so you could take either Viletide or Devolve, not both.
Yeah.
But still though, yeah, you can still yeah, still a cool idea. Little shooty beastie boy.
But yeah, it's that sort of thing of trying to make sure that if I'm gonna equip certain items or something to a character, then make sure it's going to be something that they're actually going to get a lot of use out of.
Yeah. So you build
'Cause
like a little.
yeah, because as you said, it's it's the points for magic items and weapons and all of that sort of stuff has gone up. So if you're buying an item, you kind of want to make sure that you are actually getting good use of it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's even in the collection I've got at the moment, there's quite a lot of different options and combinations that I could try out to see sort of how those work out. And obviously, my army's got quite a lot of options for making units have the ambush special rule as well. So again, that adds in more different options and a way of sort of doing things. And then I've got a couple of units on that I'm going to be working towards on myself, and then I've obviously put an order in with yourself for a few extra units as well, so it'll give me even more options.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty cool, isn't it? So you've got your ideas for the way you're going to move next with your Beastmen then.
Yeah, I think for me is I think kind of like you've done. I need to have a few games using different units to sort of see how they work in the new edition and what's kind of changed for them, because as you've mentioned, looking at stuff on paper is very different to how things actually turn out on
Yeah,
the tabletop.
it definitely is. Yeah, and especially if you're looking at it with the mindset of an older edition.
Yeah.
Because there are things that have changed. There's lots of little things that have changed, and you go, "Oh yeah, actually, something might be really good in 6th edition or 8th edition, probably wouldn't be so good in this," and vice versa. So it just, I mean, yeah, like obviously large blocks of dudes with stubborn, for instance, they're still pretty good, but they're not as good as they probably would have been in 8th. They're still really good, but not as good. For instance. So yeah, it's all pretty good. The future is bright. Anyway, have you got any events booked in for Old World yet?
Well, I've got a little one-dayer at Bristol Independent Gaming.
That's what I'm
also
coming
known
to
as
as
Big.
well.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So Jim's running that. It's going to be that's going to be in April, beginning of April. Seems like it's going to be super casual. Obviously the game at that point will be out just long enough for people who are brand new to, or just really want to start a brand new army for Old World, to have got some stuff put together and maybe slapped a few layers of paint on. But again, he said there's no painting requirement for it because it is very new for everybody. Just to have a feel for the game and have a few games and have a good time. So looking forward to that. I believe there might be a certain event going in Exeter at some point.
Yeah, so
towards
we
the
the
middle of the
June
year.
event. So I'm going to be running an event. So it'll be 2 days Old World event in Exeter. It's going to be on the 15th and the 16th of June. So it should give people plenty of time to kind of get a bit more experience playing the game. But it will still be, it's still going to be open to people that maybe never played before. People might have played a couple of games. Maybe you've just, you've bought your models and you're painting them and you're thinking, oh, I'd quite like to go and play with someone. So if you're interested in doing that, it's going to be a 2,000 point event in Exeter, like I say. It's down at the Whipton Social Club, which is kind of fairly near to Pinho, if you know where Exeter is. There's free parking outside the venue, so it'll be 2 days. There's 2 games per day, 2,000 points. There is a painting requirement on the models, but you just got to be painted, so don't turn up with bare plastic. But that is really the only requirement. There is going to be no base size requirement for this. Now, I don't know if some other events are going to start mandating base sizes. Actually, that is something I wanted to talk about as a bit of a diversion. So I was going to mention it earlier and I completely forgot. So Obviously, there's a lot of videos online saying, "Oh, you need to change your base sizes. Oh, this is how you get a movement tray to base your base sizes, etc., etc." Now, the game is perfectly playable with any base size. You can play old base size to new base size, and it does not matter. So the only changes caused by base sizes are so obviously if you're a new player, this doesn't matter. But if you're an old player, a big jump from the old editions of Warhammer Fantasy to Old World is that all the base sizes have been quote unquote increased. So Games Workshop have put a base size in the profile of every unit, saying this is the base size that you marked on. Almost all those base sizes have increased from the base sizes the models were originally sold with, or the base sizes the models were designed to play with in the older edition. But with the way the Old World works now, Games Workshop have put there's a little note on page, I think it's 93 of the rulebook, mentioning that the base sizes don't really matter, but if you want to play a matched event, then you should update all your base sizes. That's complete bollocks, to be honest, to put it in a word. And I think a lot of the YouTubers are putting stuff up because a lot of the time they're actually selling movement trays. So they've got a lot of money to be made from that. Like Mini Wargaming and Mountain Miniatures. Now, although they've produced some really good content, they've very much been pushing the base size change and going, oh, well, if you don't want to change your base sizes, buy a moving tray because your bases need to be bigger. They don't. So the only real two rules that make any difference of base sizes. So the first one is your fighting rank and models in combat. So if you've got models in combat and they've got smaller bases, there's probably going to be more of them in contact with the enemy unit, which means they'll get to make more of their attacks if they've got more than one attack on their profile. It's very, very difficult to get more than one attack on your profile on a model that will be on the 25mm base in the Old World. The only models I can think of off the top of my head that would have that would be goblins or men at arms with frenzy, which
Same for
is very
Ungors with frenzy, but again,
Ungors and 25s. Well, sorry, on 20s. I'm on 20mm, not 25s. Ungors are 25s.
They're now 25.
Were they 20 before? Were they Ungors?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. There you go. So Ungors with frenzy. There you go. So that, or maybe a unit with double hand weapons. So Corsairs from Dark Elves. Orc Boys, they wouldn't be on it. They're on 25s already. There's not a lot, to be honest. It doesn't make that much of a difference, to be fair. You're probably talking about one model, maybe two models difference. That's 1 to 2 attacks difference. But it's nothing in the grand scheme of things, and that is offset by the fact that if you've got smaller bases, you will take a lot more hits from stone throwers, from templates, from cannons, that sort of thing. And I'm not talking like a small amount. We're like a lot more. If you compare the difference in hits from the template, from a 20mm base to a 25mm base, or from a 25 to a 30mm, it's a big difference, and you will take a lot more hits. So I'd probably say overall it's probably a disadvantage unless you're specifically playing into those small bases, in which case you're just being a bit of a dick. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. You're probably going to be at a disadvantage overall. Playing with those smaller bases, if the opponent's got a lot of artillery, or if they've got flame weapons, breath weapons, spells with templates, and those are probably more common than units with small bases and multiple attacks. So yeah, it's not really an issue. Anyway, back to the point. There will be no base size requirement for this event. Doesn't matter what if you've got an old army and you want to bring it. If you've got a new army you want to bring it. If you've got old models on small bases and new models on bigger bases, that's fine. Obviously, the best thing to do, I would say, would be try not to mix the base size in a unit because it will make stuff really difficult. There are rules for joining characters to units if the base size is different. You just put the character on the outside of the unit. There's no issues with that. It doesn't impede you in any way, really. It might mean your character might not be able to make all their attacks if you've lined the unit up weirdly, so you'll need to make sure you line the units up properly. But that's the only difference, to be honest. And we're all adults. We can get over it. If there's a slight issue with it, we can get around it. And it's still not perfect now, though. They've put the base sizes up, and it's caused some other issues with various characters joining units. The Beastman Chieftain, for example, has got 2 base sizes. Because there's 2 units now with different base sizes. So it's like, oh, he can take this size or this size. And it's like, all right, okay. So, Basically, what I'm saying is, don't worry about your base sizes. It doesn't matter. If you've read something or you've seen a video saying you need to change your base sizes, you don't. You really don't. It's really not required for the game. So unless you're trying to play a tournament game at a super high sweaty level, and people are going to be moaning about a millimeter difference or something, then that's a different ball game. But that's not going to be something you're going to experience. Sorry, Dave. What was that? You want to say something?
I was going to say, where can they find out about these?
Oh,
tickets?
sorry about it. Yeah, sorry. I was going to get back to that. Anyway, so tickets will be going up on Eventbrite probably at the end of this week. So
Nice.
when they're up, we'll put them. Obviously, they'll be in Eventbrite. I'll try and post them around a couple of different groups. They'll be around on Facebook, that sort of thing. I'll put them up on my Instagram as well, which is at XWargaming, and on your one, which is at Deaths Deployment.
Yep.
So we'll get them around. They'll probably, they'll be around. Or you can obviously message me or Dave, and we'll put you in contact to get a ticket. They're probably, I'm not expecting to sell them out immediately, but there are limited places. So if you do want to go, then just sort of watch the space. My aim is to get them up on Saturday the 26th. That's my aim to have them up then. That's what I'm planning to do. All right, it's probably, I would say, 10 o'clock Saturday set on that Saturday is what I'd like to do. But that might change a little bit depending on
the 27th. You mean?
Sorry, I looked at Friday. Yeah, my bad. Shit. Yeah, yeah. Saturday 26th. Saturday 27th. Sorry. At 10 a.m. is what I'm aiming to do. But if they go up before that, well, I try with one not to put them up before that. That's what I'm aiming for. But yeah, so it'll be 30 quid. You get 4 games over 2 days. Parking's free. You get free tea and coffee. You'll need to bring a 2,000 point painted Old World army. You'll need your rulebooks or a digital copy of your rulebooks. I don't care how you get the digital copy; doesn't bother me. Just bring a charger for your digital device, so you don't have you're not halfway through a game and you run out of battery. There's plenty of parking there. There's toilet facilities there. Like I say, you got free tea and coffee. There's loads of access to takeaways. There's a pub pretty much next door as well. There is actually a bar on the venue. I don't know if it'll be open though, so don't worry about that. I'm not quite sure at this stage what the issue of bringing your own alcohol on the venue is. I suspect it's not allowed, or I'm not allowed to tell you can do it.
I imagine so.
Yeah. So I would say I'm not allowed to tell you you can bring your own alcohol, but you can bring your own food and drink, and just obviously be respectful. There's also plenty of places to get food around the place, and obviously you're only going to be about 15 minutes away from Exeter as well, or it's the city centre anyway, so you can, and in the evening there'll probably be a load of us going down for a meal, so if you want to come and join that as well, be more than welcome to.
The best part of it all is you'll get to meet us both. Oh,
get to meet us both. Yeah.
Give us abuse to our faces.
Exactly. You can be like, this might be the worst podcast I've ever heard. Please stop. Which is understandable, like that's reasonable. If you want to come and say that to me, you can. So I'll be running it. Dave will actually be playing it.
Yeah.
It'll be just playing the missions out of the rulebook at this stage, just because again it's going to be fairly early days for a lot of people. So we'll be playing a different rulebook mission for each game. So we'll probably start off a battle line, and then we'll randomly select a mission after that. But there will be options to play board-specific missions if you want to. So if you and your opponent want to play a bespoke mission for the table you're playing, then you can do. But you're under no obligation to do that. It's it will be mainly focused on turning up, meeting people, playing some games, seeing each other's armies, just working towards that first step into playing the old world. So if you've got any questions, you can message me or Dave. So I say that is the event is going to be on the 15th and 16th of June in Exeter, and the tickets will be going up at 10 o'clock on the 27th of January. Oh, sorry, Dave. Go on.
Have you got a name for the event?
I actually don't have a name for the event yet. I haven't written. Suggestions on a postcard. Yeah. There will be a name by Saturday. It's just the event currently, but by Saturday there will be an event. Funny, I've actually got everything else done other than the name of the event. It's always the last thing that needs to be
Yeah.
done, I suppose. We're also so obviously we're using all the current rules. Any rules that come out between now and the day of the event will be valid. All of the legacy armies are also valid. There's going to be none of this. Oh, it's a legacy army, you can't play it.
Yeah.
Absolutely bring your legacy armies. If you've got special characters that don't have rules, then use the most appropriate generic character for them. So Archeon would be like just a Chaos Lord and the Demon Steed, for instance. If you have got models that are completely unplayable in this edition, then let me know, and I will either recommend what I would like you to proxy it as. So, say you want to bring like a Celestial Hurricanum, I'd say proxy that as a War Altar. That'll be fine. Use the War Altar rules. So then you're all good. If you've got models from your Warhammer Fantasy Army that you really can't play, we'll look at either doing some little bespoke rules for them, or we'll work something out, because I don't want to sort of stop people that have been playing Warhammer Fantasy for years from coming, because it's it's nice to get into an event. The main thing I've noticed currently is you can't take the Blood Crushers of Khorne, which are quite a popular unit in 8th edition fantasy, because they're fucking insane.
Yeah.
But they're not in Old World at all currently. So because I know obviously the background for Old World is that the Chaos they're not ascendant at the moment, so they're not particularly strong. So a lot of the more demonic stuff isn't there. But it'd be nice to see those models on the table. So we'll work out some way of playing those if you want to bring them. They could be there'll be something you can use them as, or we'll work out some rules for them. So yeah, okay. So I think that's everything.
Just
Go on, what you
proxy
say?
them as Marauders.
Yeah,
Be
it's
fine.
proxy as Marauders,
They're
yeah.
basically the same thing, aren't they?
You could probably use them as Chosen Knights quite easily. I think Chosen Knights with a mark of Khorne would be fine.
Yeah.
But of course, by then we might get rules for Chaos to field those, because the Army's infamy for Chaos might be the god-specific lists.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. I have a strong feeling that might be the case, but who knows? Yeah. So as I say, tickets will go up Saturday the 27th. 30 quid each. Any questions? Message me. Message Dave. Yeah. Tell your friends. Tell your mum. Yeah. Be good. We'll play some Warhammer Fantasy. Yeah. So I think that's, to be honest, that rounds the podcast out, doesn't it?
I was going to say just on events.
Oh yeah.
The only other ones I've seen is there is one sort of near London. I think it's like Lancing that I've seen come up a few times on Facebook, but unfortunately that's about 3 hours too far for me. So yeah, just obviously keep an eye on Facebook. That's generally a good place to look out for events. And also there is some whispers that Aaron may be doing
Danger Close.
Danger Close, maybe doing a Old World Day at some point in November, but nothing's been confirmed yet. But keep an eye out for those, because it'll be one day will be Heresy, and then the other day would be the Old World, I imagine. But yeah, keep an eye out for those as well, for Danger Close, because Aaron events are fantastic as well. They're really good, whether you're into Heresy or Old World.
Yeah, they're really worth going to. I mean, talking of which, we've got a few Heresy events lined up as well, haven't we?
Yes. Well, you've got more than me.
Well, I have, yeah. I mean, because you got Orthan's Hope coming up, haven't you? Because we're almost there for that now, aren't we?
Yeah, so I'm on the March one for Orthan's Hope. That's being done in Crediton, and then I'm on the reserve list for Aaron's Easter Van event, because I don't know what was happening, but I completely missed when the tickets went on sale, and so yeah, unless a couple of people drop out, I might not be going to that one personally, but yeah, there's still hope for that one in around Easter. And then the only other Heresy one I've currently got booked is the Greetings of the Warp one that they're doing. I think it's September.
Yeah, that's going to be really good, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be my first Greetings of the Warp
Oh, that'd be really good.
event, and yeah, I've not heard anything bad about those events that they run. So yeah, really looking forward to that as well. But you've got a couple more, I believe.
I have, yeah. So I've got both Orthon's Hopes. So I'm doing the Orthon's Hope in February. It's the February the 16th, I believe, and 17th. So I'm actually been putting some militia together for that because I'm playing Imperial Army for that. So I've been trying to, because I've been so hard on the Old World train, I've just abandoned heresy stuff for a little while. And so I've actually just been basing or half basing. I seem to do weathering powder on my militia jetpack troopers. So it's a recon squad with jetpacks and las pistols, which I think might be the worst investment of time for points that I've ever painted. Which
Beautiful.
is brilliant because I reckon these guys are going to die turn one at every game. So I've just seen some pictures of those. They look very nice. I'm really happy with them. Because these
Yeah,
are
they
some
look
of the
really
first
good.
models that I like digitally kit bashed. So they're like they're all 3D printed, but they're a mixture of some of the parts on them are they're all 3D printed as single piece models. Some of the parts on them are from I can't think what the creator's name now is, and that's really bad, but it's the Hive City Guard that he does, and they're excellent. The actual models, they're like the Rogue Trader themed. I'm gonna actually find his name now because now I'm saying it, I feel like I should, you know, be like, support him. They are the Hive City Guard by the Electororum on Colts 3D. But yeah, they're really cool. So the helmets the helmets on these are his stock helmets. So the helmets on everything else, I changed my set. So I opened up a blender and cut some bits out and changed them a little bit. But these helmets are the original helmets that he made with them. So I thought these ones because they're quite different to the original Road Trader design, and I wanted a more Road Trader design. But for these, for the jump jet dude specifically, I thought I'd use I thought I'd use his original ones. They look a bit. They've got like balaclavas on and stuff. And I quite liked that. And then I made the jetpacks and the jetpacks and the harnesses. I made so it's bits I made myself in Blender, and then some bits from various other creators. Like I cut some pieces off of Mark V. For Mark V Marine. And then I put some little Imperial Eagles, like in the little bit where the vent normally is. The backpacks although they are ripped directly from a piece of Rogue Trader artwork of a dude that looks exactly like this, wearing a jetpack. So Space Marines used to have they in the original background, their power packs were jetpacks.
Okay.
And Guard used to be able to take those jetpacks as well. So I've just sent you a little picture over of that.
Oh yeah.
So try to replicate that as closely as possible.
Well, yeah, pretty bang on.
So I was really, they're sort of a labour of love, this unit. So they've had a lot of time put into them. Like I say, they're obviously the models by the Electorum rather. They're so good. Like he makes really good models. His pre-sports are fucking terrible, so don't use his pre-sports. But the models are great. So use print the unsupported versions. Don't print the pre-sports. but the actual 3D modeling is amazing. They're really nice. So I'd recommend having a little look at those. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to playing the army. So I've got these. I've just got to finish basing. I ran out of tufts while we were recording, and I've realised I've got no tufts left. So I've got to make a little trip to Clifton Road Games and pick up some tufts. And then once I've done that, I can put the weathering powder on the basis. And then I've got to build 3 Land Raiders, which will have the 3rd line rule, which is going to be excellent. So they're going to become bunkers turn 1. And then I've got to paint a 20-man artillery team with 3 Earthshaker cannons. And I've got to print and paint 3 Sentinels. And I've got to paint 15 Rough Riders. And then I'm done.
Just a
And
small
then
amount then.
just a small amount, yeah. And then I'm ready to play 2 events with that list. So we're playing Orphan's Hope in February and March.
Yeah.
So it'll be good. Then I've got what event have we got after that? Then it's Old World, isn't it, in Bristol after that? And
Yeah.
then I feel like I'm going to another Heresy event. Oh yes, I'm going to Kerry Love's Kerry Love and Aaron's helping run it, but it's mainly Kerry's. Kerry is running his militia only event, and he's a fucking
Yes.
hero of doing it because someone had to do it, and Kerry's finally stepped up. You know, there's many men were called, but one answered. And it's
The
Kerry.
tickets sold quite quickly for that as well.
Fuck yeah, yeah. So I'm well keen for that. So obviously that's all mortals. So it's Imperial Army, militia, Solar Auxilia. You can take little allied detachments of Mechanicum, but you're not allowed to take like the insane units. You can't take like Thanatars. You can only have 1 unit Myrmidons, which I do worry about because I think 1 unit Myrmidons could probably kill an entire army. But we'll ignore that. Yeah, so that looks like a really fun event. So that's in Bristol as well. That's in October, so it's a little bit of time away, but that should be really fun. The only downside of it is that it's only 2,250 points. Which, I understand the reasoning of, oh, well, it's militia and it takes people a long time to build and pay militia, but bollocks, 3,000 points. Do it. Hashtag 3,000 points of militia.
You cowards.
Yeah, exactly. Cowards. 3,000 points of militia. Make it happen. Don't be a coward.
Oh dear.
Do it. If
But-
everyone turns up to that event with 3,000 point armies, then the game, it becomes a 3,000 point event, doesn't it? See?
Yes, but it should technically.
Exactly. So that's what you need to do. Tell your friends. 3,000 points. Militia.
I'm being a super coward. I'm not going to that one because I don't have a militia army.
But you could. You're a coward, Dave.
Yes.
You
Well,
could have a 3,000 point militia army.
yeah, but I could also have twice as many beastmen as I currently have.
Well, what if you played a Beastman militia army? What if you magnetized all your bases?
just all all with close combat weapons.
Yeah, you can. You literally can. You can play Abhuman Helots, and that's literal. I don't think you even need a second thing. You take Cult Hall, I think. But yeah, Abhuman Helots, and then everyone gets two close combat weapons. Done.
Beautiful.
Friends on. There you go. Abhuman Helots and Friends on. Done. 200 Beastmen.
Yeah.
See?
I could pretend my Sligore's Lehman Russ.
Yeah, you could. You literally could. There is absolutely no reason why you cannot play a militia army. Cowardice. It's the only answer.
Well, now the reason is that there's no more tickets left. But
but
I see
you
the point.
go on the reserve list. So anyway, that's going to be sick. And then we've got obviously Greetings to the Warp. And that's going to be awesome as well. So yeah, got all the events coming up. I don't know what I'm going to take. I'm loyalist to Greetings, I know. So I would take some flavor of White Scars, or I might just take Militia again. Actually, I think 2024 is the year of the Militia. To be honest, because
Yeah,
I love playing Imperial Army. They're the funnest army ever. It's great. It's like when you cheer because you killed a Space Marine. You're like, yeah, it's so good. You know. Like when you kill a Terminator and you're like, that's pretty. It's like a moral victory. You're like, even though I'm losing like 15-2, I've won in my mind because I killed a Terminator.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. It's
With a
just,
las pistol.
but mate, with a las pistol. Yeah.
With a rusty crowbar.
Oh yeah, I need to make a go with the rusty crowbar. I think I've got an STO for a rusty crowbar actually. Mm.
You've got enough to do.
Well, could be more. I could get the Rough Rider Sergeant a rusty crowbar.
You certainly could.
Mm.
But
Anyway,
yes.
yeah. So plenty of events coming up, plenty to do, and I suspect there are more Old World events in the pipeline as well.
Yeah,
There'll be loads.
I think apart from Aaron's events, sort of heresy wise, or maybe if there's a local doubles event, maybe might be interested in that. But I think for me, the rest of the year is going to be keeping an eye out for Old World events because
Yeah,
I am so firmly on that train.
yeah. It's such a good game. Like they've done such a good job on it. Like I said, I know we've obviously said there's some issues with where the rule book's laid out. But other than that, it's such a good game.
Yeah,
It's brilliant.
obviously I haven't had a chance to actually play it myself yet, but even from watching all of the different battle reports from the different YouTube channels that are doing it, and this is from channels like Mountain Miniatures and Mini
Yeah, I
Wargaming.
mean, man, I mentioned it's like, guys. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say that that have got a good history of doing fantasy games. Obviously, they're well in it, so they've done their battle reports have been brilliant, but also sort of some newcomers to doing the battle reports like Tabletop Tactics, who until recently it's just been 40k, and then they recently started delving into Age of Sigmar. They've come out with some brilliant videos for Old World as well. So it's been, I haven't seen a battle report so far that I haven't really enjoyed watching. So that gives me a lot of hope for when I finally get a chance to throw some dice.
Yeah, and I meant to, when you say man, I'm sorry, I just completely was like mainly because he's just done such a good job. Man of Miniatures.
Yeah.
I think his videos are just like the whole Old World release. I mean, his fantasy videos are excellent anyway. Like he produces brilliant fantasy content, but his Old World stuff has been like above and beyond. He must be exhausted because he's released so much, hasn't he? I know there's a couple of videos where he'd been like recording for like 14 hours or something, hadn't he? Like, and he's just like, but he's just produced like this incredible, like really high, like high quality content.
Yep.
Like, he's made sure that all the miniatures look good, the tables look good. He's explaining all the rules. He's sort of done deep dives into all of the books.
Yeah.
Like he's done such a good job. Like, it's.
And then on top of all of that, he ends up flying across to Nottingham.
He flew across.
This weekend.
Yeah, because he's been running like the I haven't seen much about that yet actually. Yeah, because he was running the starter events, wasn't he, for fantasy on Saturday? Which apparently, by all accounts, that Saturday was just like utterly rammed. Like Games Workshop completely underestimated how many people were going to turn up to that.
Yeah, well, normally when they have these sort of big, sort of open weekends, it's they normally do put a limit. Even if you're not paying for a ticket, it's there's normally a limit on how many people can turn up. But they just said it's open to everyone. Turn up if you want to.
Building got completely flooded.
Yeah, and but going back to Mountain Miniatures, he must be absolutely cream crackered now after all the travelling and doing that, as well as all this lead up preparation with getting all the videos ready.
Yeah, he's done an incredible job, I think.
Yeah, I think if there's some Games Workshop do one of these community award things again in the future, I think people should definitely give him a little vote, because
he absolutely deserves it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
because he's just done it's been fantastic. Helped build the hype. Games Workshop have probably got a lot of trade from him, I'd imagine, just from his work.
Yeah.
So,
and himself with movement trace, remember?
Well, like I say, him and Mini Wargaming have been trying to sell their movement trace. But that's to make money in it, and they that's fair enough. And I don't know if they're endorsed by Games Workshop to try and push the base choice changes. Perhaps, I don't know. It's probably win-win for them. People, if they say you have to change your base size, then it's either you change your base size or you buy a moving tray. So it's winner for them. But you don't need to do that. You really don't need to do that. But we'll let him off that because he's made some brilliant content.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Shall we call it a night then?
Yeah, I think we've wrapped it on for long enough.
Nice. Right. I will speak to you later then.
Cheery bye.
Bye, everybody.